Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was infused with the DNA of both Madara and Hashirama part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Deep within a dark cave in an unknown land, an old man could be heard coughing harshly. The old man sitting on a chair with several cables connected to his back. He had frail wrinkled skin, long dull white hair that hung freely on his face, with a bang covering his left eye. His only visible eye was a deep red color with 3 black tomos in them. The old man slowly raised his right hand as though signaling someone. A few seconds later, the ground in front of him slowly rose upwards, and a plant-like figure emerged. "You called Madara-sama?" The plant-like man asked in a deep dark voice. "Zetsu, when is he going to attack?" The now named Madara asked, not refereeing as to who this he was. "On the day the Jinchuriki gives birth. 2 weeks from now, the seal will be at its weakest." At that moment Zetsu replied. Madara nodded his head and dismissed the black Zetsu. 2 more weeks before my successor shall be conceived, he thought with a bit of excitement. He suddenly hunched forward in a coughing fit. Bring his hand forward. He grimaced at the sight of blood on his hand. Setting himself on his throne-like chair, he looked down at his frail body with his Sharingan, and frowned. Not much time left, he thought bitterly. Some might say that he already had a successor in Obito, however that was not so. While he might have trained Obito and manipulated him into continuing with his plan, or so to speak, Obito was but a stepping stone for him to further his goals. Someone he would cast aside when his grand plan was at play. He wanted someone of his own blood, someone who would one day surpass him in his prime, someone to carry on his blood. Who knows, he might even provide me with a good dance when the time comes. So when he heard about Kushina Uzumaki being pregnant with triplets, he could help but be giddy at the thought of one of them being his successor. Being the child of a Jinchuriki, an Uzumaki no less. The child of the famed 4th Hokage and Kushina Uzumaki. The child was bound to be brimming with so much potential. He would inject the child with his and Hashirama's DNA. Should the child survive, he would become a force unlike any other, a god amongst men. A true successor to Madara Uchiha. A small chuckle escaped from his old dried lips, which soon turned into a dark, loud laugh that rang throughout the small dark cave. 2 weeks later. Ah! The pained screams of a woman giving birth could be heard. "Damn you Namikaze Minato! I'm going to remove that thing that makes you a man!" The red-haired woman shouted again. "Come on, Kushi-chan, just a little bit more," replied a very nervous and very worried blonde-haired man, who was by her side holding her hand. "Don't Kushi-chan me, you ah!" Her pained runt was cut off when she felt all the pain she was feeling greatly relieved. The sounds of 3 babies crying brought the panting, exhausted Kushina back to reality. She opened her blurry eyes and saw 2 nurses hold 3 blankets in their arms. "Congratulations, you gave birth to 3." Whatever the nurse was going to say was cut off when a kunai lunged into her head, killing her instantly. A swirl-like ripple suddenly appeared in the air, and before they could even question what it was, a man wearing a black cloak with an orange mask, with a single eye hole suddenly appeared from the ripple. And he had somehow gotten one of the children, and was pointing a kunai at the young infant. "Step away from the Jinchuriki, or this baby dies at the tender age of 3 minutes, the man demanded, pushing the kunai closer to the child. "And now let's all come down," Minato said nervously, his mind racing through the many possible ways to save his child and family. "I'm perfectly calm, maybe you should take your own advice." The masked man responded back, and to the horror of the 2 new parents, he threw the child in his arms in the air. "Minato!" Kushina shouted in horrified alarm. Minato jumped from his position, and in a display of speed worthy of his title, he disappeared and instantly reappeared in midair, with his child in his arms. His eyes widened in horror when he heard the sounds of burning explosives tags. He saw that the explosive tags were tied to his child's blanket. Without a moment to waste, he quickly removed the explosive notes and disappeared from the house, to get them away from his wife and his other 2 newborn children. He reappeared a second later in one of his well-hidden safe houses and placed the crying infant in a small little baby crib. "Stay safe, Naruto," he said lovingly. A second later he vanished in a bright yellow flash. Moments later, after Minato had disappeared, a dark cloaked figure slowly made his way towards the child. He stopped right next to where the child was and hovered above him. Blood-red eyes glowed momentarily as the man looked at the child. The man gave a small nod, confirming something, before his eyes stopped glowing and he reached into the pockets of his coat. He took out 2 injections from the pockets in his cloak, both with a red liquid inside each. He took hold of the first syringe and injected it into the infant. The young child cried even louder in obvious pain, but the man ignored it. He took the second syringe and repeated the same processes. When he was done, he disappeared into nothingness, as though he was never there to begin with. 3 months later. 3 months had passed since the masked man had released the Kyuubi from the weakened Kushina, and summoned it in the middle of the village. A lot of people were killed, ninja and civilian alike, none were spared. The day marked the greatest disaster in the history of the Hidden Leaf Village. With the majority of the outer sector of the village being destroyed, and thousands of lives lost, the great hidden village had a long way to go before it could reach its former glory. The 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, sacrificed himself and used the Shuki Fujin to summon the death god and sealed the kyubi within an infant, Hitomi Namikaze. He sealed the yin half of the kyubi within the death god's stomach and the yang half within Hitomi. Kushina spent 2 months in the hospital, recovering from childbirth and having the kyubi forcefully extracted from her. Only a few people were told about Hitomi being the new Jinchuriki of the strongest Bijou. Everyone else were told that the third Hokage died dragging the kyubi with him into the Shinigami's stomach, which technically wasn't a lie, simply a half-truth. Whilst everything seemed to be going well, as the village was being slowly rebuilt and getting back to its feet, all was not well in the Namikaze household. The youngest child of Minato and Kushina Namikaze, Naruto, was terminally sick. When Minato had come back to take Naruto from the safe house, after saving him from the masked man, 3 months ago, he found him pale and breathing heavily. Minato quickly rushed to the hospital to find help for his son, however even their best medics couldn't find what exactly was wrong with the child. Jiraiya had once suggested that maybe it was because Naruto's body had become reliant on the Kyuubi's chakra within the womb and without it, was shutting down or was not function well, however that idea had quickly been shot down. If that had been the case, then why was it that Hikari, their second child, was not suffering the same fate? In desperation to find a cure for his son, Minato had sent Jiraiya to find and bring Tsunade back to the village. If anyone could find what was wrong with his son and cure him, it was her. That is where we currently find them now, in the hospital room with Tsunade standing in front of the bed where a baby Naruto was lying. He was plugged into several machines, cables and had a breathing mask on him. H's small body was frail with very light pale skin. On top of his head a mash of bushy blood-red hair could be seen. He looked to be at death's door, and the only thing keeping alive being the beeping machines that he was connected to. "Shizen!" Tsunade called. A brown-haired girl, who looked to be at least 9 years old, rushed into the room holding a large file in her hands. "Yes, Tsunade-sama?" The girl practically squeaked out. "Get me his files. I want to see all the results of his blood test," Tsunade asked, as he ran her glowing hands over Naruto. Shizen handed the large file that was in her hands to her. Tsunade took the file and started looking through all the pages. After a little while, she closed the file and addressed the worried family, who were looking at her intensely, with a serious face. Tsunade saw Jiraiya, who was leaning on the widow with arms crossed and a grim look on his face. Minato was holding his 2 daughters and looking at Naruto worriedly. Kushina, however, was the worst of all. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were puffy and red, showing that she had been crying. She had dark rings around her eyes. She was sitting on a chair which was right next to her son's side, looking at him with worry, love and guilt. Tsunade coughed into her hand to gain all their attention. Kushina jolted up from her seat and looked at her. Minato moved a bit so that he was facing her. "Shizen, could you leave us for a while?" Shizen looked at Tsunade and was about to object, but when she saw her serious face she nodded her head and left the room. She knew better than to question her master when she was serious. Whatever was going on had to be very important for her master to not only kick her out but to be this serious. Tsunade rarely ever became serious. After making sure that no one was listening in on them and that her apprentice was out of earshot, Tsunade finally spoke. "Your son is suffering from what I can tell, is that his body was injected someone's DNA, 2 people to be exact," she began. Everyone in the room gasped. She waited for a few seconds to allow them to digest what she had just said before she continued. "His body is rejecting the new DNA, which is why he is in this state. By all rights he should have died during the first few hours that his body had come into contact with the new DNA. However, because of his strength and healing factor, his body has slowly been accepting the new DNA, combining it with his own. His Uzumaki genes and a small amount of the Kyuubi's chakra within his body can be thanked for that." Tsunade finished. The room is silent for a few seconds before. "What? You mean to tell me that someone did this to him? I swear to Kami, when I get my hands on that son of Kushina," Minato called out, before said woman could continue with her murderous, angry runt. Kushina looked at her husband with anger clearly visible on her tired face. She saw the serious and worried expression on his usually calm face. He looked down at their sleeping daughters in his arms. The 2 babies stirred a bit from the noise and looked as though they were going to wake up. After a few seconds of waiting, the 2 calmed down and went back to sleep. "But that makes no sense. Why would anyone do such a thing? More importantly, who did it?" Jiraiya asked, standing up straight and speaking for the first time. "Whoever did it had to be someone very powerful to be able to break into my safe house without my notice. Or it was someone close to us who knew about Kushina giving birth and the location of where she gave birth," Minato speculated, his eyes narrowing in deep thought. "Oh? Why is that?" Jiraiya asked. "When Kushina and I were separated, I took Naruto to one of my secret safe house, not even my personal ANBU guard knows about. The house is surrounded by several barrier seals that make it nearly impossible for anyone to enter that house without a special key that only me and Kushina have. Not only that, but anyone that tries to enter the house will set off an alarm that will warn me." Everyone became silent after that, before Kushina spoke. "Maybe it was the masked man. He managed to break into a house guarded by the best ANBU in the village and took Naruto before any of us could even notice. His ability to teleport anywhere and become intangible would allow him to easily get inside," Kushina suggested. Minato shook his head negatively. "It couldn't have been him. I was with him during the whole ordeal. Maybe he sent a clone whilst he fought you, Jiraiya added. Whatever the case may be, it still doesn't explain why they did it, Minato replied with a frustrated sigh. Can you tell us whose DNA was used, Tsunade-sama? Kushina suddenly asked, bringing everyone's attention to the blonde Sannin. Tsunade opened the file she was holding and skipped past a few pages before stopping at a seemingly random page. She was silent for a while as she read through the information on the page. Everyone watched as she suddenly froze. Her eyes widened and she started going over the page again and again, until she dropped the file altogether. What does it say? Kushina asked worriedly, after seeing her reaction. The results show that your son was injected with the DNA of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Both DNA have almost completely merged with his own, Tsunade said. Her body was shaking slightly and Jiraiya was doing the perfect impression of a gaping fish. It also showed that the DNA will fully merge within 2 months. By then he can, in all accounts, be considered as a Senju, Uchiha, Uzumaki and Namikaze. Talk about a long surname, Jiraiya added jokingly. However, no one even paid mind to him. All of them were still frozen in shock from what they had just heard. In the early morning of the great village of Konoha, the sun slowly rose, enveloping the entire village in its golden warm rays. All was silent as the village slowly rose from its slumber. The wind was softly blowing, gently caressing the many houses and buildings. A few ANBU and ninja could be seen jumping soundlessly from rooftop to rooftop, and Naruto, Namikaze, this is the last warning I'm giving you. Wake up. The voice of Kushin and Namikaze could be heard all the way to Suna. A small red-haired boy who looked to be 6 years old groaned from the comfort of his bed as he reluctantly raised his head. He blinked a few times before rubbing the sand in his eyes and got up from under the covers of his bed and made his way to the door. The young boy gave a small sigh as he slowly opened his door and started to do a mental countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Naruto! 2 excited shouts was all the warning he got before he was tackled by 2 red blurs. He groaned in obvious pain and discomfort. Having experienced the same thing every morning, you'd think he would have been used to this by now, however that was not the case. Hitomi, Hikari, get off me, Naruto said, after trying and failing miserably to get away from their morning death hugs as he had called them. For a few seconds nothing happened before 2 pairs of arms unwrapped themselves from him. Morning, Naruto, and the 2 sisters said simultaneously. The first person whom Naruto saw was Hikari. Like all of them, she had red hair and deep blue eyes. Her hair was long, reaching her waistline. She looked much like their mother when she was young. The second red-haired girl, Hitomi, looked much like Hikari, though unlike her sister her hair was shorter, reaching barely past her shoulders. Her hair was a lighter shade of red as for the rest, while they were pretty much alike. Morning, Hikari-chan, Hitomi-chan, do you have to do this every morning? The 2 girls pouted and looked at him with teary eyes, slightly quivering lips and hugging each other with their faces pressed together. Come on, Naruto, stand strong, don't fall for it. They are just doing dash. His thoughts were cut off when both girls' shoulders started to shake. Fine you win, he said with an annoyed sigh and muttered something under his breath that both girls did not hear, which did not stop them from instantly cheering and giving him a big hug. Naruto, Ka-chan said we have to get ready. Hikari was the first to speak. She tried to put on a serious face and for further emphasis she put her hand on her hip, copying what she had seen her mother do a few times already, though that only made her look cuter. Read for what? Asked the now confused Naruto. He heard Hitomi giggling and turned to her, waiting for her to answer. The academy starts today, remember? At this Naruto froze, then slowly his eyes lit up in excitement. A large smile slowly made its way across his face and faster than the 2 could blink, Naruto rushed to the bathroom. A few minutes later he came out wrapped in a towel. He went back to his room and they heard clothes being shuffled around, and when the door opened again Naruto could be seen wearing a dark blue hooded jacket with a white shirt inside. He was also wearing black shorts and blue ninja shoes. Let's go already, we're going to be late, Naruto shouted to his sisters, who were still standing at his door with a stupefied look on their faces. Naruto is weird, they both thought, and a second later they followed him down the stairs. In the kitchen, Kushina smiled when she heard the footsteps coming from upstairs. Her smile got even wider when she saw her son followed by his sisters. Good morning, Ka-chan, Naruto greeted his mother. Morning, Ka-chan / morning, Ka-chan. Hikari and Hitomi greeted their mother after coming down the stairs. Kushina walked towards her and kissed them on their foreheads. The children knew their father usually woke up early and left for work whilst they were still asleep, and seeing that he was not in the kitchen where he usually was in the morning, they knew he had already left for work. Kushina knew how much her husband wanted to be there with them on their first day of the academy, but there had been an emergency at the Hokage Tower, so he had to leave earlier than usual. Good morning, Naruto, Hiko-chan, Hito-chan. Are you all ready for your first day of the academy? The triplets nodded their heads excitedly, though she noticed Naruto was the most excited one of them all. Honestly, it did not surprise her at all. With that blood flowing strongly in his veins, it was to be expected. How about we stop at a Chiraku ramen stand on the way to the academy? Kushina suggested, earning 2 excited squeals of agreement and 1 grunt of disagreement, which did not surprise her at all. It was a surprise to everyone when they discovered that Naruto, unlike his mother, father and sisters, did not like ramen. In fact, he actually hated the food. This came as a shocker to everyone, especially Kushina, with how much both she and her husband loved the stuff. They expected all their children to love it too, if not more. Though he did have a favorite food which he loved just like his family loved ramen, and that food was Pocky. The first time he had tasted it, which came as a gift from Jiraiya, who had forgotten that it was their birthday and had searched his pockets for something to give them, and had produced a packet of Pocky. While the two girls found the Pocky a nice treat, Naruto had loved it, and became obsesses. Till this date, Minato still cursed Jiraiya for that packet of Pocky that he gave his son. "Don't worry, we will get some Pocky for you on the way." At this, Naruto smiled excitedly. Nothing outdid Pocky. At the academy, Kushina and her children saw the academy building a few meters away. She looked at her children and saw them walking a few paces ahead of her. She smiled knowingly. They sure are exited, she thought to herself. She frowned a bit when she noticed that Naruto was covering his head with the hood of his jersey. She knew why he was doing it. When they had discovered about Naruto being part Uchiha and part Senju, Tsunade had done a bloodline test and had discovered that he indeed had the capacity to activate the Sharingan, but did not know about the first Hokage's would release, as it was never documented as a bloodline, and no other Senju, even his children, had awakened the wood release. Jiraiya had suggested that they release the information to the rest of the village. Kushina, like the protective mother that she was, had refused the idea, not wanting to point an ever bigger target on her child. In the end, it was Minato who convinced her by asking her how they would explain to everyone how he had activated the Sharingan if he did, and that was a big if, he managed to use the first Hokage's would release. In the end, she had reluctantly agreed with them telling the villagers. On a lighter note, Tsunade had agreed to stay in the village and was now the head of the medic department. Her reason for staying, you might ask? Well, it was rather simple really. She now had a living blood relative. With Naruto having Senju DNA, her grandfather's no less, he unknowingly had become a member of her family. So after a few hours of deep thinking and weighing the pros and cons of staying, Tsunade had chosen family over adventure. She decided to stay. Both Minato and Kushina had asked her to become their children's godmother, a position which she tearfully agreed to. When the news was released to the village, naturally everyone was shocked at first, and eventually they got over their shock and many had accepted the news with happy, excited faces. A few, Danzo, had even gone as far as to suggest that the child be trained as village weapon. With the amount of potential that the child possessed, he would easily become powerful, a fact that many agreed to. His idea, however, was quickly shot down, rather painfully, by a very angry Kushina. The Uchiha clan was the only ones who were against Naruto possessing the ability to activate their precious bloodline, the Sharingan. But when Minato had explained just whose blood was used, and what that exactly meant, they all seemed to suddenly change opinions. Madara Uchiha may have been considered one of the biggest traitors in the history of the Hidden Leaf Village, but no one could dispute his strength. He was after all the strongest Uchiha ever born. The fact that someone alive had the same blood and would hopefully have the same talent as he once did in his prime, easily shut them all up. The Uchiha elders better improved their image of the young Namikaze, by explaining to the clan how they could use him as a way to improve the clan's reputation and power. When the boy managed to become very strong, which everyone knew he would, they would claim it was because of their mighty Sharingan. Their reputation would rise exponentially as the boy became stronger, and even better, it would show everyone, especially the Hyuga clan, just whose Jujutsu was superior. So Naruto had become the talk of the village, with everyone holding high expectations for the poor boy. As Naruto grew older, many of the villagers would treat him, and to a far lesser extent, his sisters, like a prince and princesses, which technically they were. Shops often gave him free food or treats. People would sometimes give him a small bow as he walked past them, and this only got worse as he grew older. Minato had to daily refuse marriage proposals from many nobles and families. Naruto was constantly the center of attention wherever he went. This unfortunately had the side effect of making him avoid going outside of their house, and at one point refused to go to the park on their usual family outings. More unfortunate was that he mostly spent his time in the house and avoided people like a plague aside from his family. And sad to say, because of his distant and avoidance of people, Naruto did not meet any children his own age, and because of that he did not have any friends. Hikari and Hitomi were treated like princesses because of them being the children of the Hokage, but their treated was not as severe as their brothers. Sure, people greeted them wherever they went, and a few shops gave them free treats here and there. It was nothing that was bad enough to deter them from having a normal childhood. And unlike their distant brother, they had friends whom were all the children of the clan heads, Yamanaka Ino and Hyuga Hinata. Kushina increased her pace when she saw the many villagers that were looking at them, specifically her son, and whispering to themselves. When she was beside him, she reached down and took hold of his hand. He looked up at her in confusion, and she gave him an encouraging smile. He smiled back at her and nodded back at her. By now the academy building was very close. Inside the academy, all the parents with their children were led to an empty hall, where the ninja hopefuls were introduced to their new senseis and was shown to their classes. And so came the time for each parent to say goodbye to their children and leave them in the care of their new instructors. Unfortunately for a few, what was supposed to be a simple gesture of hugs and a few words of encouragement turned into an embarrassing scene. Now remember, don't start a fight unless you have to, and if you do get into a fight, make sure you beat the little punk into a pulp, that way they will know never to mess with you, Kushina advised her children, who all sweat dropped. What kind of advice is that? They all thought. And another thing, don't let anyone bully you. If they do, tell your teacher, or better yet tell me so. Naruto ignored her from that point, choosing instead to look around. He saw a few adults that he recognized either from one of the shops he had visited earlier or from having met them on the streets. A few kids that he recognized were those that usually played with his sisters. One of them he recognized clearly was a platinum blonde-haired girl with light blue eyes, Yamanaka Ino. She usually came to their house and played with his sisters. However, even though she frequently visited their house, he had never said a word to her. The other girl that he recognized was an indigo-haired girl with lavender pupilless eyes. Her name was Hinata, heiress of the Hyuga clan. From the brief meeting between the two of them, Naruto had noticed that she was very soft-spoken and very shy. She rarely came to visit his sisters, and when she did, she was always accompanied by a guard. Before Naruto could continue with his observation any further, the angry shout of his mother stopped him. "Naruto! Hitomi! Hikari!" The three children almost jumped in fright when they heard their mother shout at them. They looked at her and gulped when they saw the angry expression on her face. "Were any of you even listening to what I was saying?" Kushina asked with a sigh, after calming down. "Yes?" They all answered/asked at the same time. Kushina's shoulders slumped, and she muttered something under her breath that none of them heard. The instructor that had previously addressed them all, and asked all the parents to leave as it was time for the young students to go to their classes. Kushina hugged all her children one last time, giving them all a kiss on their foreheads. She stood up straight, wiping the tears that were threatening to fall from her eyes. "Remember to stay together. I'll be waiting for you at the gate when the academy ends, okay?" She looked at her children and took out a camera, from Kami knows where, and asked them to stand together. Naruto was standing in the middle, while hugging Hikari on his left, and Hitomi on his right, both girls giving a peace sign. She took the picture and with one last wave, watched them follow the other students to their classes. She waited for a few more seconds before wiping the fresh tears in her eyes, and followed the other parents out of the hall. They grow up so fast. When Naruto first heard that he would attend the academy, words could not begin to describe how happy he felt. He had begged his parents to start training them early, and they agreed. So at the tender age of 5 years old, his parents started training them. Although his sisters took the training seriously as they could for their age, Naruto was more dedicated. He practiced his kunai and shuriken accuracy every morning for at least 3 hours and would go through the taijutsu stances his father taught them every day. Now one would wonder why a child so young would train so extensively at such a young age, instead of playing with other kids or doing other things that children his age would be doing. Truth was, Naruto knew people treated him differently. He was not stupid, far from it actually. What he did not understand, however, is why people treated him the way they did. Sure, his parents were very powerful and known throughout the entire elemental nations, but he could not help but feel that there was a deeper reason for it. The fact that everyone he met treated him with far more respect and prestige than his sisters further helped prove his point. He hoped that by becoming powerful and making his own reputation, people would finally recognize him for him, and not for the name he carries. So day after day he would train aimlessly, wanting to prove to others his own worth. When his parents told him that he would be attending the academy, he was ecstatic. This was his chance to prove himself. He could not help but be giddy at the thought of the things he would learn, all the powerful jutsu and techniques that they would be taught. Like many children that were attending the academy, he was sorely disappointed when during the first week of the academy all they learned was the history of Konoha and other minor things. In all honesty, he had no idea what those lessons had to do with being a ninja, since it wasn't something one could use to save their life or the life of someone else. His sisters though seemed to actually enjoy the academy. Perhaps it was because they got to spend a lot of time with their friends. Still, friends aside, he was seriously regretting ever attending the academy in the first place, and to think, he still had 6 more years to go before he could graduate. -6 months later, Naruto sat in his usual place in the class, which was at the back. He looked around the class and saw his sisters, like always, sitting a few rows in front of him. Not much had really changed in the past 6 months. He still disliked the academy, and the fact that had yet to be taught anything noteworthy. Annoyed, he had asked his father when they would start teaching them real ninja stuff. His father had just chuckled, and told him that they would eventually be taught. To Naruto's eternal frustration, however, his father never did say when that would be, although there was something that had happened that made him happy. He had made a new friend, his first friend ever, to be exact. Flashback 5 months earlier, the bell had just rung, signifying that it was break time. All the students excitedly rushed out of the classroom, not that anyone could blame them. After all, they were free from the boring preachings of the teachers. For a few minutes at least, Naruto walked around the school playground, looking for somewhere to sit, preferably somewhere where there were no other kids. He saw his sisters sitting under a tree chatting happily with their friends, Ino, Hinata, and a pink-haired girl who they had just recently made friends with. After a few minutes of walking, he found an empty bench, which was thankfully hidden by a few trees. He looked around to see if there was anyone around who might have been using the bench, and after finding no signs of anyone around, he sat on the bench and was about to open his bento when he heard a few shuffles in the nearby shrubs. He waited for someone to appear, but no one showed up. However, the shuffles continued. Curiosity getting the better of him, he stood up and walked towards the bush. He stopped right in front of said bush and spoke up. "I know you're there, you might as well just come out," he called out, trying and failing miserably to make his voice as stern and commanding as he could. With him being so young and his body not yet having gone through puberty, his voice came out more like a cute squeak than anything else. There was a moment of silence before whoever was in the small shrubs started to come out. The person who came out was a tad bit taller than Naruto, meaning that he at least had to be the same age as him. He was wearing a long-sleeved, hooded, light green jacket that completely covered his body from the waist up, with a tall collar that hid part of his face. The hood was up, covering most of his short and spiky, dark brown hair. Inside his jacket, he wore a green shirt, with dark brown pants that ended midway down his calves. He was also wearing the standard dark blue shinobi shoes. Round and thin wired black sunglasses hid his eyes. His name, from what Naruto could remember, was Shino, heir of the Aburame clan. Like most of his clansmen, he was a very silent person who only spoke when spoken to, and even then he would only say a few words. Not that Naruto had ever spoken to him before, he had noticed all of this, because they were in the same class. There was an awkward silence between the two, before Naruto spoke. "What were you doing?" "In the bushes, I mean." Shino raised his hand, and on his finger was a small black bug. "I was studying the types of insects that I have found here at the academy," Shino said, looking at the insect on his hand. "Oh," was Naruto's intelligent reply. Honestly, he had no response to that. The awkwardness further increased as the two boys stared at each other, unsure of what to do or say next. "My name Naruto, by the way, Namikaze Naruto." Naruto introduced himself, stretching out his hand. "Aburame Shino introduced himself, bringing his hand up to grasp and shake Naruto's outstretched one. Flashback end. Ever since then, they had started hanging out more, and before long they had become good friends. His mother had been really happy and slightly relieved when he had told her that he had made a friend at the academy. She had been worried that her son would never make any friends of his own. Now if only she could convince him to make more. Naruto was brought out from his walk down memory lane by the sound of the bell ringing, signifying the end of the school day. After saying goodbye to his friend, he made his way to the academy gate where he saw Hitomi and Hikari waiting for him. "Hurry up, Naruto! Ka-chan is not here to pick us up!" Hitomi shouted out excitedly. Their mother had started taking missions again 3 months earlier. She probably got bored of being alone the whole day, Naruto thought to himself. She would usually come home before dinner, since she did not take missions that would take her far from the village. Nor would she take those that would take her a long time to complete. He knew why sisters were so excited, and to an extent, so was he. Their mother only allowed them to eat ramen/pocky once a week, and with how much they loved those foods, it was torture for the four of them, their father included. So whenever their mother was away like today, they would visit the Ichiraku ramen stand, in Naruto's case, the pocky store, and treat themselves to several bowls of ramen and pocky sticks. Picking his up pace, Naruto walked to the gate, and the three made their way to their destinations. 1 hour later, after the little snack, the trio made their way home. As they approached their house, they all felt a deep feeling of foreboding. Feeling slightly scared, they slowed down their pace and slowly opened the door into their house. The house was silent, too silent. A very bad feeling slowly rose from the pits of their stomachs. "Titu-san? Keika-chan?" Hitomi called out nervously, her stuttering voice ringing throughout the empty house. They slowly walked into the dining room and were about to turn and go upstairs when suddenly, before they could even blink, they heard a whistling sound like something cutting through the air at great speeds. Acting on his gut, Naruto jumped in front of his sisters. For a very tense second everything was deathly silent before Naruto. The horrified shrieks of Hitomi and Hikari rang through the now not-so-empty house. Naruto looked at them in confusion, wondering what had made his sisters scream out his name in obvious horror. He felt something sticking out of his stomach. He looked down and found to his shock the end of a kunai knife sticking out of his stomach. He saw that the area around the kunai was turning red. "Oh," was the only thing that he managed to say, before he saw the ground getting closer to him and heard the screams of his sisters. Two men dressed in black A&BU attire, wearing blank white masks, suddenly appeared inside the room. Both of them were holding a kunai in each hand. However, the two distressed girls were at their father's side, crying and screaming for their brother to wake up, completely oblivious to the two men behind them. They didn't understand what was going on. All they knew was that someone had hurt their brother, and their brother was now on the ground, bleeding. Normally, in a situation like this, you would have to run away and get help. However, both girls were only 6 years old. Add on to the fact that they were too shocked and scared to do anything, so they did what any normal child would do: cry. Naruto could see and hear his sisters crying, and he could feel an extreme pain in his stomach area. Through his hazy vision, Naruto could see two black figures moving slowly towards his sisters. He tried shouting for them to run, but every time he tried to speak, the pain would intensify tenfold, and all he managed to do was to try to rasp out something that made sense. Despite his efforts, however, both girls did not even hear what he was trying to tell them. His mind was shouting, screaming for his body to move, but it would not respond. "Move, move, move," he chanted in his mind. At the very last second, just when the dark figures were about to reach his beloved sisters, he felt it. Something warm, something powerful, rushing through his veins like fire. The pain in his stomach suddenly disappeared, his vision cleared and became even sharper, and time slowed down for him. With a primal roar, he jumped to his feet, and with lightning fast speed, he yanked the kunai from his stomach and stabbed it into the first ANBU's heart. The second ANBU was shocked at what he had seen and froze for a second, a mistake that proved to be his downfall. At that very moment, Naruto, with all the strength he could muster, threw the bloody kunai in his hand at the ANBU's head. He could clearly see the kunai traveling in slow motion to the surprised ANBU's head. He saw as it ever so slowly plunged itself deep into the man's head. He saw the man's eyes change from that of being surprised to that of horror, finally to the emptiness that accompanied lifelessness. All this happened with the fraction of a second, and this was all forever recorded in his brain. When the man fell to the ground, Naruto blinked, surprised at what he had just done, and his surprise soon turned into horror. Before he could even mutter a single word, his eyes rolled to the back of his head and he fell to the ground. However, he never felt his body reach the ground, as he felt two rather soft arms catch him. The last thing he saw was a red blur and a flash of yellow before everything went black. A few minutes earlier, Hokage office. Minato sat in his chair with a very bored look on his face. He was almost finished with the paperwork of the day, and would soon herd home to his awaiting family. He glanced at the clock and saw that it was already 3:00. Kushina had yet to report in, which meant that she had not picked the children up from the academy. They probably stopped for some ramen on the way home, he mused. Yes, he knew about their little stops when Kushina was not there to pick them up. He had caught them one day, using the crystal ball when he was checking to see how they were. He did not tell Kushina. After all, he too ate ramen a few times during the day. Telling her would not only make him a hypocrite but would also make her become suspicious of him too. Speaking of Kushina, he could feel her chakra signature approaching. Minakoi. Without knocking, Kushina barged into his office. He smiled at her and stood up to give her a kiss. How was the mission? He asked her, after breaking off from the kiss. Same old, I had to kick some evil mercenaries' ass Tebane. Kushina responded, unconsciously adding her verbal tick at the end of her statement. Minato just sweat dropped at the vague mission statement that she gave him. Are you ready to go home, or should go on without you? She asked him. I'm finished. Let me just grab my jacket, and I'll haration us both home. At the house, when both parents flashed home, they immediately knew that something was wrong. For one, they could both smell blood in the house. Minato could not sense any of the ANB that were always guarding their house and children, and lastly, yet most importantly, their ninja instincts were telling them that something was wrong. One does not make it far in the ninja career when you don't listen to your instincts, for they are almost if never wrong. Now on guard, husband and wife made their way into the dining room, where the stench of blood was strongest. Through the corner of his eye, Minato could see Kushina struggling with not just rushing in there to see if their children were safe. Only years of being a kunoichi stopped her just barely. When they finally reached the dining room, what they found shocked them. Hikari and Hitomi were kneeling on the ground with tears in their eyes, looking at where Naruto was standing with his hand outstretched with a large amount of blood on his stomach and hands. They looked at, more specifically, his eyes. They were surprised to see two red eyes, with a single tomo in each eye, looking at the dead figure with a kunai logged in his head. Kushina was the first to recover from her shock. When she saw his eyes turn into their normal deep blue and roll into the back of his head, she moved quickly and caught him before he could reach the ground. Minato recovered a second later after Kushina. He instantly created two shadow clones that disappeared after nodding at him. He then moved to the ANBUs to check if they were dead and saw that they indeed were dead. After that, he went to see if his daughters were hurt, and saw that they were fine and were just traumatized. He pressed the back of their necks and they both fell into his arms, unconscious, giving them a chance to recover from the shock. Kushina had caught her son before he could fall to the ground, and she noticed instantly that he was pale, which was probably from the loss of so much blood. She cradled him into her arms and turned to see Minato holding their daughters, who were both passed out in his arms. Now extremely worried, she quickly voiced her concern and question. What's wrong with them? She asked, trying to stop herself from breaking down and freaking out, which she knew would only make things worse. They are both fine, just a bit traumatized. I knocked them out so they could rest. How's Naruto? He replied, showing far more control over his emotions than his wife. From what I can tell, he has lost a lot of blood. We have to take him to the hospital, immediately, before his situation gets any worse. At this, Minato nodded his head and moved closer to where his wife was holding their son. She grabbed his shoulder, and there was a flash of yellow light. When the light died down, they were all gone. They never noticed a single plant root spread out on the ceiling. At the hospital, the only warning that the hospital staff got was a yellow flash of light before the fourth Hokage suddenly appeared with his family. Upon seeing the limp, bloody children, Tsunade, who had luckily been at the front desk collecting some medical files, quickly rushed to the family. She grabbed the attention of a few nurses working, and guided the family to an empty emergency room, and made quick work of attending to the wounded children. -2 hours later, after 2 hours of waiting, the emergency doors opened and Tsunade stepped out. Kushina immediately rushed to her with Minato not far behind. How are they? Kushina asked worriedly. Her eyes were red from crying and fresh tears were already gathering. Both Hitomi and Hikari are fine, They had no physical injuries on them. However, both of them were traumatized, and will likely be suffering from nightmares for a few days, Tsunade explained, receiving a sigh of relief from both parents. Your son, on the other hand, he lost a lot of blood. This caused his body to go into shock during the operation. It took us several minutes to stabilize him before we could give him the blood-replenishing pills. He was the most traumatized, and I had to put him into a drug-induced coma-like state, to allow his body and mind to fully heal. Both parents were silent, before Minato asked Tsunade a question that was plaguing his mind. How long will he be in the coma for? With his higher-than-normal healing rate, he should be awake in a week's time. I would suggest that one of you be here when he wakes up. Seeing a familiar face might help. The two worried parents nodded their heads and released breaths that neither of them knew they were holding. Now would one of you please tell me, what happened to my godchildren? Tsunade asked sternly. Minato sighed and looked at his wife, who was already at her children's bedsides looking at them with so much love and worry, deep emotions that only a mother could bring out. We arrived, and so Minato explained to Tsunade how they had arrived at their home, to find their daughters crying on the floor and Naruto standing in front of two dead bodies. Tsunade was shocked and horrified at what she had been told, having guessed that Naruto, at 6 years old, had already made his first kill. 1 week later, the first thing he felt, upon waking up, was a splitting headache, and the constant beeping sound was not making it any better. He slowly opened his eyes and quickly closed when he was assaulted by bright light that hurt his eyes. After a few seconds, he opened his eyes again and looked at the window. He noticed that it was bright outside, probably midday. Growing confused with each passing second, he sat up from the bed and tried to remember how he had gotten here. Like a dam exploding, his memories came rushing back to him, and he remembered everything. How H had been stabbed in the stomach with a kunai while saving his sisters. Taking said kunai, and stabbing the kunai deep into the man's heart, and the throwing it with dead accuracy at the other man's head. The lifeless expressions from the men stared at him, the images playing over and over in his head. He did the only thing he could. Ah! He let out the loudest scream he could ever muster. He held his head with both hands as he continued to scream. He never heard the door open. All he felt was the warm presence of his mother hugging him. He slowly stopped screaming and started crying, as his mother continued to hold him, and was now making cooing sounds to calm him down. After 30 minutes of crying, his wails quieted down into small sobs. I'm sorry, Kaka-chan. I didn't mean to. Naruto cried out. Sure. I know, it's okay, nobody is going to hurt you. Kaka-chan is here, Kushina said soothingly, with tears running down her face. This continued for another hour, before Naruto finally fell asleep in her arms. By then she was humming a soft melody to help calm him down, and thus allowing him to drift off to sleep. She looked at the door and saw Minato, Tsunade, and Kakashi standing there, looking at her. She blinked, and wondered for how long they had been standing there for. Her face turned serious when she addressed them. Did you find out who was responsible? She asked, not looking at any of them, but at her sleeping son. I'm afraid not. Whoever was responsible made sure to cover their tracks. I had Inoichi search the minds of the dead A and BU, however their minds had already been wiped clean. A memory seal had apparently been placed on them to wipe their memories clean, should they have been caught or died. Minato answered her, with his hands clenched, clearly angry. Kushina's hair slowly rose, and started flowing angrily in the air behind her. When I find out who is responsible, I'm going to sure they suffer death, she said darkly, and Kakashi, who had been silent the whole time, slowly backed away from the ever-increasing killer intent that Kushina was releasing. Thankfully for him, Naruto, who was still sleeping, stirred a bit, his body slightly shaking. Instantly the Ki disappeared, and Kushina was now holding her son even closer, and was muttering soft words to him. Everyone in the room's sweat dropped at the 180-degree change she had just gone through. Women, the two men thought to themselves. Unknown location. In a dark building, hidden underground, an old man with a bandage covering his left eye and his left hand wrapped in bandages stood, holding his cane in front of two kneeled men in front of him. Report. Mission successful, Danzo-sama. Subject: Namikaze Naruto has awakened both the Sharingan and showed signs of using would release. One of the men reported in an emotionless voice. Danzo nodded his head, and tapped his cane on the ground, and the two men vanished. Good. With the boy's power growing steady and from such a young age, he shall become a force to be reckoned with when he grows older. A pity I could not take him under my foundation, Danzo thought to himself, as he turned around, and walked towards his own office. 3 days after Naruto had awoken from his coma, he had been released from the hospital. He had been dreading the day when he would have to go back home. Not that he did not love his home or anything, rather he was not willing to go back to the place where he had killed someone. Fortunately for him, his parents had anticipated this and were about to move to a new home when Tsunade suggested that they come live with her at the Senju house, which in all honesty was big enough to support several families and still have extra rooms. The young couple had first been against the idea, not wanting to impose. However, Tsunade had retaliated, saying had she wanted more privacy she would have bought a smaller house, like she could afford it. To persuade them more, she had even suggested that it would be best they move in with her, so that she could monitor their children, especially Naruto. She could help him more if she had more time with him, and so with a bit of hesitation they had agreed, much to her ever-increasing joy. So when instead of going to their home, Naruto found himself being led to a different house altogether, Naruto had asked his mother where they were going. She had smiled reassuringly at him, and told him that they were moving in with their grandmother. He was relieved and scared at the same time, relieved that he would not have to go back to their new house, and scared because his grandmother's hugs were far more painful than his sister's morning death hugs. The trip to the Senju house seemed far longer than what he had remembered. Maybe it was because he was now more self-aware than previously. The looks of the villagers had turned from that of admiration and respect to that of pity. It seemed like news of their attack had spread throughout the village rather quickly. He could hear them now more than ever, muttering to themselves about him and his sisters being attached. Many of the people that they passed would offer their apologies to him. Naruto found himself getting angry with each apology he received. He did not want that. He wanted for them to respect him for his actions. The fact he was thinking about how people would have respected him more for killing 2 did not register to him. He wanted for them to talk about how he at the age of 6 had managed to kill not 1 but 2 to save his sisters, not offer him pity. What was pity ever good for? He decided then and there that he hated pity more than anything. Unconsciously his Sharingan activated with the single tomos spinning angrily. He did not hear the gasp of surprise from people when he did that, nor did he feel his mother place her hand on his shoulder. Kushina had been watching her son. She could feel his anger slowly increasing every time a villager would offer him words of pity. She could understand why he was angry. Nobody liked to be pitied. And with so many people willingly showing so much pity, his anger was starting to show. His Sharingan activated and she could feel him release a very small amount of Ki, which in all honesty was quite impressive for a 6-year-old boy. Wanting to calm him down, she put her hand on his shoulder. She frowned when she noticed that he had not even reacted to her touch. Later at the Senju house. Arriving at the Senju house, both mother and son walked into a rather large house. Having been there already, Naruto already knew the layout of the house, so the need to explore had long since been sated. The house was very silent, giving Naruto a déjà vu feeling, something that he did not like. He wondered where everyone was, as though reading. His mother answered him. Everyone is not home at the moment. Your grandmother was kind enough to allow us to live here. Naruto nodded his head in both agreement and relief. They moved into the living where Naruto sat on the large sofa with his mother sitting beside him. Would you like to talk about it? She asked, not mentioning what exactly it is, already knowing that he knew what exactly she was talking about. He shook his head in disagreement. Kushina nodded her head at that. She had expected him not to want to talk about it. It's okay if you don't want to talk about now, but when you're ready, come to me and we can talk about it. Okay, dear. Naruto nodded his head once more. They were silent. Kushina took in a small breath, preparing herself for what she had originally been wanting to talk about. Naruto, she began. Naruto, who had been staring at the ground, looked at his mother. She had addressed him by his full name instead of her usual Naruchan. She rarely ever called him by his full name except when she was either angry or when he had done something wrong. She was also seemed nervous, evident by how she was shifting a bit in her sit. Whatever she wanted to say had to be very important for her to act like that. Kushina took a few short breaths. She had decided to be the one to tell her son about it. Minato had agreed with her with a bit of hesitation. His son was closer to his mother, so he knew that the best person to tell him would be Kushina. He knew his son was smart for his age and would understand what they would tell him. It was his reaction that he was afraid of. It was for that very reason they had refrained from telling their other children about it. They did not want for their children to start treating their brother differently, though there was little chance of that happening with how much the two girls loved and adored their brother. It was always better to be safe than sorry. And so Kushina told her son about how he had been injected with the DNA of both Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara just a few hours after being born. She, however, did not tell him about the masked man, or that the Kyuubi was sealed inside his sister, Hitomi. After his mother finished speaking, Naruto was silent, his young mind trying to digest everything he had just heard. Then everything suddenly started making sense to him. Why everyone treated him like some prince. He contained within his blood the DNA of the strongest people in the history of the Leaf Village. He knew exactly who those two men. He had read several books on them after all. Hashirama Senju, the first Hokages, the god of shinobi, the man who single-handedly captured all of the tailed beasts, expect the Kyuubi, and handed them to each hidden village as act of trust between the villages. The man who is said to have created the forest that surrounds Konoha, one of the strongest men ever born. Then there was Madara, co-founder of Konoha, the strongest Uchiha to be born. The man who could single-handedly destroy an army and continue to fight on. The only man who could ever fight Hashirama on even terms. And let's not forget his own parents, his father, the fourth Hokage, the fastest man alive, a man who killed an entire army with one technique, ending the third great shinobi war. His mother was not far behind either, one of the seal expects in the world. Her sword skills are said to equal, if not greater than those of the 7 great swordsmen of Kiri, one of the strongest women alive, second only the Tsunade Senju. All these great and powerful, very powerful, and he was related to them. Nobody said it, but he knew that everyone was accepting him surpass them. Suddenly he felt as though all the weight of the world was placed on his shoulders. How could he even hope of becoming that strong? Could he even become that strong? It was not fair, he thought to himself. Why was he, out of all the people in the world, given such responsibility? Why out of all the children born on that day was he injected with their DNA? For once in his life Naruto became jealous of his sisters, jealous at the fact that everyone treated them normally, jealous that they had made many friends whilst he only had one, not that he had anything against his only friend but he wanted more, he wanted to play with other kids like his sister did. A small part of him, a part that he had long ago buried deep within himself, hated them for that, hated how his life was, hated how everyone treated him, hated how unfair his life was and hated whoever it was that had given him those genes. Unknown to Naruto, his Sharingan, which had been active since he had unconsciously turned on in the streets, had been spinning faster and faster as his thoughts turned darker and darker. When they finally slowed down, instead of the one tomo in each eye now instead were two tomos in both eyes. Kushina had worriedly looking at her, wanting to how he would react to what she had told him. She watched as his face changed from emotions, from that of deep thought, uncertainty, jealous and finally anger. His body started shaking in obvious anger. Wanting to calm him down, she took his small soft hand into hers and squeezed a bit for support, and to get his attention. When he looked at her, she almost gasped when she saw the two tomos in his eyes instead of one, which she had first seen him with. He has already progressed it to the second stage so quickly, she thought, both proud and amazed at the same time. Her son had only awoken it 1 week ago, and now he had progressed it to the second stage. Not even Itachi the Uchiha prodigy had managed to mature his that quickly. She couldn't wait until she told Mikoto. She could only imagine the look on her face when she told her how her son had managed to progress his Sharingan to the second stage a week after awakening it. It would be priceless. Naruto? So does that mean I'm related to Bachan by blood? Kushina blinked at that. Of the questions to ask, she had not expected him to ask that. Yes, I guess it does. Can I also use the Sharingan like the other Uchiha? Kushina first chuckled, then proceeded to laugh. You haven't noticed, have you? She asked, and Naruto shook his head. Yes, you can. The Sharingan like the other Uchiha. Intact, you've had it active the whole time. Naruto blinked at that. He had it active? Then why did he not feel any different? Now that he thought about it, everything did seem different. It all looked much clearer, and Mother seemed to glow blue. He yawned. He felt tired, whether from having his new bloodline active for Kami knows how long or from having to digest so much information in one day he did not know. Why don't you go and get some rest? I can see that you're tired, she suggested, to which he nodded and stood up, made his way upstairs. Your room is the third on the right. Naruto continued his way upstairs until he reached his new room. It almost the same as his old one, but there were a few differences here and there, but the room pretty much looked the same. Instead of going straight to bed, Naruto made his way to the dresser that was in his room. He looked at the mirror, more specifically his eyes. So this is the Sharingan, he wondered to himself, looking at the two red eyes with the two tomos in them. Now how do I turn it off? The next day, Naruto slowly opened his eyes to find himself not in his room. He was about to freak out when he remembered that they had moved in with their grandmother. He felt tired. He did not get much sleep the previous nights. Firstly, it had taken him close to an hour to learn how to shut down his Sharingan. Then when he had finally gone to bed to take a well-deserved rest, there came yet another problem. Every time he closed his eyes, images of that dead man he killed would instantly appear in his mind, forcing him to stay awake the majority of the night. He slowly sat up from his bed and made his way to the door. He was slightly disappointed though when he did not hear two shouts of his name like usual, or the morning death hugs had been so used to. He made his way downstairs, and much to his surprise he found everyone seated around the kitchen table chatting happily as each enjoyed their morning breakfast. Even his father, who was usually by this time already gone to work, was there as well. Naruto-kun. Shizen, his elder sister figure, was the first to notice him. Everyone stopped talking and looked at him. Good morning, Naruto-chan, and how are you feeling today? His mother asked him in an affectionate tone. I'm fine, he answered her lowly that she almost did not hear. His grandmother stood up and with a gleam in her eyes walked towards him, much like hungry lion would stalk its prey. Morning, Naruto-kun. Come give your Bachan a morning hug. Naruto took a step back and was about to turn and run for his life when suddenly he found his face being buried deep within the generous bust of his grandmother, and getting the life squeezed right out of him. Fortunately for him, his savior came in the form of Shizun, who had seen his face turning blue. Tsunade-sama, I think you should let Naruto-kun go before he passes out. Tsunade pouted a bit before letting him go. Naruto sent Shizun a thankful look for saving him. Morning, son, how was your sleep? His father asked him with a slightly amused look on his face after watching his interaction with Tsunade. It was nice, he said in the same tone he had used to answer his mother. As if I barely got any sleep at all. He shouted angrily in his mind. He glanced at his sisters, who were both silently looking at him. He had expected them to be the first ones to actually be the first to greet him. Instead, both girls were quiet, something he never thought possible, and nervously stealing glances at him. Are they afraid of me? He thought worriedly. Maybe they were afraid that he might hurt them. He couldn't get the images of those men he had killed out of his mind. He wondered how his sisters viewed him now. Did they think he was a monster for killing those men? He looked at both of them right in their eyes and they both looked away. So they are afraid of me, he thought sadly, his eyes watering a bit before he blinked the tears away. Hikari and Hitomi were nervous. Their brother had risked his life to save them, and worst of all, he had to kill two men to save them. They were both ashamed and worried at the same time, ashamed at themselves for not trying to even put up a fight, ashamed that their brother, the youngest of them, had to do all the fighting for them, and even got injured in the process. They were also worried of what he would think of them. Would he hate them for not helping him? Angry that they did nothing as those two men were about to kill them? Why don't you join us for breakfast? Your food is in the warmer, his mother suggested, unknowingly cutting into her children's depressing thoughts. Naruto shook his head. No thank you, I'm not feeling hungry, he said, already going out of the room. Some time later, Naruto walked aimlessly in the streets of Konoha, ignoring their usual whispers. They did not matter to him. Nothing did at that moment. His sisters, the people he loved more than anything in this world, were afraid of him. His chest hurt. The pain he was feeling was unlike any other. It hurt far worse than when he had been stabbed in the stomach by the kunai. It felt like thousands of daggers were constantly being stabbed in and out of his heart. What was he going to do? He did not notice that he had walked into the local park that he once refused from ever going. He was about to turn back when he saw them, both his sisters sitting on the swings, gently moving back and forth. The lump in his throat suddenly increased. Slowly, with hesitant steps, he made his way to them. Hikari-chan, Hitomi-chan. Both girls stiffened a bit, not having realized he had been there. Naruto? Hitomi asked / called, looking up. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat before speaking. I just wanted to say that I sorry for killing those two men. He swallowed hard, his voice cracking even more. And that even I, if you're afraid of me, I'll always love you. And whatever he was going to say was cut off when both girls tackled him to the ground, sobbing. What? He asked in surprise. We are sorry that you got hurt saving us, Hitomi said between sobs. We are afraid of you. Nothing you do will ever scare us, Hikari continued. The two girls continued apologizing. The pain in his heart instantly vanished. All his worry about his sisters being afraid of him vanished. They continued holding each like that for a few more minutes before getting up. Let's go and get some game. My treat, Naruto suggested, rubbing the remains of tears in his eyes. His sisters cheers at that before taking his hands, dragging him to the ramen stand. Watching his sisters smile happily as they dragged him along, Naruto made a promise to himself. He would protect his sister. He would become strong enough to protect them against anyone or anything. He would go through hell and back if it meant he could protect them. And should anyone hurt them, his Sharingan activated, spinning madly, he would hunt them to end of the earth and make them pay. A few days had passed since Naruto had had his little heart-to-heart with his sisters, and everything had gone back to normal. That, of course, is what he would have hoped to say. But alas, it was not so. Although the relationship between him and his sisters had been repaired, strengthened even, there was one problem left for little Naruto to solve. No matter how hard he tried, no matter what he tried, Naruto couldn't get some sleep. He couldn't forget the images of the dead man looking at him with those dead, haunting eyes. So he had gotten very little sleep in the past few days, evident by the dark rings that had developed around his eyes. His Bachan had suggested he refrain from going to the academy for a few days, and his mother had stopped taking missions again so she could spend the days with him and monitor his health. Kushina was in the kitchen cooking up a meal for her and her son. Her son, she thought sadly. She was very worried about him. She could see that his was not getting enough sleep lately, and was getting paranoid of his surroundings, and she knew the reason behind it. Everyone did. Tsunade had suggested that she wait for him to come to her and tell her about his sleeping problems. However, she was getting impatient. Her motherly instincts were demanding, screaming, for her to help her distressed son, but she had held strong and had not yielded. She looked outside through the window of the kitchen and saw her son sitting on the swing absent-mindedly pushing himself. Instantly her will broke. Screw Tsunade, my baby needs me, she shouted in her mind. She stopped what she was doing and walked outside, making her way towards her son with a determined look on her face. Naruto almost jumped in fright when he heard her voice. Ka-san, he said in surprise. Kushina nodded her head with a smile and moved behind him and gently started pushing him. Is something wrong, Naruto? Something you might want to talk about? She asked, carefully not mentioning what it was she was referring to. Naruto hissed before he shook his head. Kushina inwardly sighed. He was going to need a bit more push. You know, Naruto, when people are having problems with something, talking with someone usually helps. Even I at times talk to your Tusan when I have problems, just like he does the same thing when he has problems. Naruto looked up at her in surprise. You do? She nodded her head to him, before she smiled and stopped pushing him. Moving in front of him, she kneeled to his level and took both his small hand into hers, giving him a warm motherly look, and in a very soft, gentile voice she spoke. I do. Now Naruto, tell your Ka-chan what's been troubling you. Naruto looked at his lap, seeing his hands being covered by his mother's. He was silent for a while. I can't sleep, he said lowly, but Kushina heard him. Why is that? Why can't you sleep? She pressed on. Every time I tried to sleep, he stopped there and took a small breath. I keep on seeing the dead person always looking at me and I end up not sleeping. He finished with his head still facing down, and a small tear dropped and fell on his hands. Kushina instantly hugged him. Naruto, he continued to cry for a few more minutes before coming down enough for Kushina to talk to him. You know, I too reacted the very same way you did when I first killed someone, she began, rubbing the remains of his tears with her hand. Why, you did? Yes, and do you know what your grandmother said to me at that time? Naruto shook his head. She said when you kill someone, remind yourself why you did it. Was it for money? Revenge? Or was it to protect the ones you hold precious in your heart? Form your own nindo and always follow it no matter what. Your own nindo? he said softly. Yes, a nindo is a rule you live by, your own ninja way. What's your nindo, Ka-san? Naruto asked curiously. I never go back on my words and will always protect my family at all costs, she said passionately before standing up and kissing him on the forehead and walking back towards the house. Her work was done. My own nindo, huh? Later that day, Kushina was sitting on the kitchen table writing up some seals on scrolls to pass the time, and stopped what she was doing when she heard some small footprints making their way towards her. She looked up from her scroll and saw her son standing on the door nervously. She raised a single eyebrow at that. Ka-san, I was wondering if you please allow me to go to the Uchiha clan library. She blinked a couple of times and slowly thought about what he had said. Ka-san, I was wondering if you could please allow me to go to the Uchiha clan library instead of exploding like Naruto expected her to. Kushina's eyes narrowed at him. And pray tell why you want to go that library. Naruto shifted a bit before he responded. I thought about what you said earlier about forming my own nindo and came up with one of my own. Kushina nodded her head, wondering where he was getting at, and also wanting to hear type of nindo he had come up with. My nindo is that I will become the strongest ninja in the world and protect my family and precious people with my very life. Kushina gave him a proud smile. I'm very proud of you, Naruto-chan, but that still does not explain why you want to go to the Uchiha clan library, she said with her eyes softening a bit. Since I want to become very strong, I want to master my Sharingan to help me become stronger, and the only place I can learn how to use it is in that library, Naruto responded. Kushina looked at him and thought about telling him about Kakashi and asking him to help him with his Sharingan, but decided against it. It will help him learn the value of hard work, she thought to herself. I will allow you to go. Naruto was about to celebrate when she cut him off, but you will only go there for 1 hour, and after attending the academy tomorrow, she finished in tone of finality. Naruto visibly deflated at that but gave her a smile before going to his room. Thank you, Ka-san, Naruto shouted back at his mother as he excitedly made his way to his room. He had to prepare for the academy tomorrow. At the academy the next morning, Naruto walked into the academy building with his sisters beside him. His head was covered by the hood of his jersey. Some of the students, those who saw him, were either giving him looks of admiration, some were giving looks of fear, and some looks of envy. He paid no mind to them and continued his way to his class. When he entered inside the classroom, everyone became silent, all their attention and eyes fixed on his form. He made his way to the back of the class where he usually sat. Sitting down, he glanced at his only friend who was sitting beside him, wanting to see his reaction. Shino looked at him and nodded his head at him. Welcome back, Shino said with his usual stoic face. Thanks, Naruto responded with a small grin on his face. Naruto nodded his head back at him and looked back to the front of the class where their sensei had just entered and was now teaching. A small smile made its way across his face. Shino, for all his quietness, was a very good friend. He did not judge him like all the other students, and instead he just accepted him for him. No questions asked, a true friend. After the academy, instead of going straight home, Naruto started walking towards another sector of Konoha. His sisters had asked him where he was going, but he had just told them he would back later. They had tried to convince him to take them with him, but his mother had come to his rescue and convinced them to let him go alone. As Naruto walked towards the Uchiha district, he was well aware of the ANBU following him. Ever since he had woken up from the hospital, he had been able to feel people, or so to speak, and knowing his father, his grandmother, and his mother, he wouldn't put it past them to have some ANBU tail his every footprints. The Uchiha district was quite far from the village, so it took a little while to reach it. Arriving at the Uchiha district, Naruto made his way to the clan head's house. Passing the many Uchihas on the way, he was a bit surprised at the many respectful looks of approval he was getting from many of them, though there were that few that were giving angry and disapproval looks. He arrived at the house that was in the middle of the clan compound. It was several times bigger than the other houses and more spacious. He knocked on the door and stopped knocking when he heard a feminine voice respond. Coming, he waited for a few seconds before he heard the door open. The person to open it was a woman with long straight black hair and black eyes. She was wearing a purple blouse with a red skirt and a yellow apron. She looked around in confusion before her eyes landed on the small red-haired boy on her doorstep. She blinked in surprise before she smiled warmly at him. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? She asked, opening the door widely for him to come in. Good afternoon, Mikoto Obasan. Naruto started after coming into the house. I was wondering if I could speak with Fugaku-sama. Mikoto looked about to ask what it was that he wanted to speak with her husband for, but stopped when she heard her husband walk down the stairs. She looked back and saw said husband walking down the stairs, and looked as though he had heard everything. Naruto, follow me into my study, where can speak in private, Fugaku said seriously, glancing at his wife who had the decency to blush. Naruto said nothing and followed him upstairs to the study. In the study, Naruto sat nervously watching as Fugaku looked at him with a very curious gaze. After what seemed like an eternity for Naruto, Fugaku finally spoke. You wanted to see me, it was not a question. Naruto nodded his head a bit before speaking. Fugaku-sama, I would like to ask you to grant me permission to enter the Uchiha clan library for a long time. Fugaku was silent, making Naruto get nervous. Why would I grant you such a privilege? Many of our clan's secrets are documented within the library, Fugaku said seriously with his eyes narrowed. I understand that, but ever since I awakened my Sharingan, I have been reading on how best to use it. However, most of the things I've read is but common knowledge, Naruto said. Fugaku agreed with him on that point. Most if not all the clans keep the knowledge of their techniques a secret to anyone but their clan members, so he was not at all surprised that Naruto had come to him seeking to access their clan library. Though he had expected the young boy to come on a far later date, not at this age, not whilst he was still so young. Allowing him to access the library will possibly gain us a favor with the Hokage and will look good on our image if the boy keeps coming here, not to mention the clan elders would bitch on if they learn that I refused him, Fugaku thought. He looked at Naruto for a few more seconds and smirked a bit when he saw him shift in his seat in nervousness. The library is at the far end of the compound. He gave Naruto his answer, his face still serious. And remember, what you learn within the library should never be disclosed to anyone else, he finished, leaking a small amount of ki at the end and putting an extra emphasis on never. I won't, Naruto blurted out and blushed in embarrassment when he realized what he had said/done. Make sure you don't, Fugaku replied in a slightly amused tone, and indicated for Naruto to leave. Thank you, Fugaku-sama, Naruto said, bowing his head and walking out of the room. When he opened the door, he was surprised to find Sasuke falling inside. He had been listening in on them, Naruto realized. He looked at the downed figure of Sasuke and stretched out his hand out to help him up. However, Sasuke just huffed and ignored his hand and stood up on his own. Naruto blinked, then shrugged his shoulders before walking out. He gave Sasuke one last curious look and saw said boy giving him an angry and jealous look. He blinked again and walked out. What's his problem? Come in, Sasuke, and close the door behind you, Sasuke gulped when he heard father say that. With Naruto arriving at the library, Naruto walked inside the building and was surprised to find an inscription on the door. Only those of true Uchiha blood can access the knowledge within these walls. The ability to understand our knowledge is hidden within those of Uchiha blood. He stopped to think for a while before walking inside. Inside the library, he saw several sections branched into 3 different parts. History, Sharingan, Jutsu, he read out loud. He almost jumped at the Jutsu section but stopped himself. First things first, he thought. Walking towards the Sharingan section, he searched for the book he was looking for and found it on the very top part of the shelf. He almost screamed out in frustration when he realized that he was far too short to reach the book he needed. He was about to go and find someone to help him when a tall figure reached for the book and looked at it before handing it to him. He accepted the book and looked at the person who had given it him and saw a teenage boy who looked to be at least 15 years old. The boy had short, unkempt, black hair and was wearing a high-collared dark-colored outfit with a tanto strapped on the right side of the back of his shoulders. Thanks, Naruto thanked the young teen who smiled at him. It's no problem. I'm Shursui, by the way. The now named Shursui introduced himself. Naruto introduced himself, already knowing that Shursui knew who he was. Pretty much everyone knew who he was. Shursui looked at him quizzically as though there was something he wanted to say but held back. Well, I must be on my way. It was nice meeting you, Naruto-san, Shursui said, turning around and stopped for a second when he heard Naruto's small reply. Nice meeting you too, Shursui-san, he smiled and continued walking. After seeing an empty table, Naruto walked towards the empty seat and sat down. He opened the book and after skimming through the contents page looking for the information he wanted, Naruto found the page number listed under abilities. He opened the page and was surprised to find it blank. Thinking back to the inscription on the door, he activated his Sharingan and was both pleased and surprised when the words in the book materialized right before his very eyes. He briefly wondered how they had done that before continuing on and started reading. The Sharingan grants the user several ocular powers dash. When Naruto finished reading, he looked at the clock and what he saw made his eyes widened in shock and horror. 3 hours had passed. Not even bothering to close the book or put it on the shelf, he bolted out of the library like he was on fire. It was already dark outside. He noticed in alarm. Kachan is going to kill me, he shouted in his mind as he ran as fast as his small legs could take him. Arriving at the house, he slowed down, took a few breaths to calm himself down, and slowly made his way inside the house. He slowly opened the door and almost squeaked when the first thing he saw was the angry image of his mother standing a few feet from the door with her hands crossed and her left foot angrily tapping the ground. Evening, Kachan, he began nervously. Naruto-kun, Kushina said sweetly, too sweetly. Why yes, Kachan, Naruto stuttered out, taking a step back and almost cried out in horror when he realized that the wall was right behind him and there was nowhere else for him to run to. His eyes almost watered when her hair started raising and swaying in a 9-tail like ponytails, her eyes gaining a glow-like image. How long did you say you would go for? Kushina asked, taking a slow predatory step towards him. 1 to 1 hour. Her angry/murderous look increased tenfold, and Naruto could swear he saw his life flash right in front of him. And how long did you take? Naruto almost pissed his pants then and there. T3 hours. She took another step forward and Naruto tried phasing through the wall and running for his life. She finally reached him and faster than he could react, she grabbed him by the scruff of his jersey and raised him to her eye level with an amazing display of strength. Do you have any idea how worried I was? The next time you decide stay for Kami knows how long, make sure you tell someone. She screamed out, shaking the poor horror-stricken boy like a rag doll. From now on till I decide when, you are grounded. Now what do you have to say for yourself? She finned her rant and blinked when she saw him looking at her with a blank gaze with white foam coming out from his mouth. Naruto? Kushina shook him a few times wanting to get a reaction out of him. Kushina was about to run and take him to Tsunade when she turned around and saw everyone expect her other 2 children looking at her barely holding back their laughs. from the commercial scene between mother and son. Tsunade calmed herself and walked towards them. She placed her hand, which was glowing green, on Naruto's forehead. Don't worry about him. He's just unconscious. You should take him to bed. Kushin nodded her head and almost jumped to the stairs, taking her son to bed. When she was out of sight, Tsunade and Minato burst out laughing. Shizen's laugh was muffled by the sleeve she was holding to her face. Time skip. 2 years later. Fire style. Dragon fire jutsu. A large dragon made purely out of fire rushed towards the training dummies at the end of the small clearing, and when it struck, an explosion sizable to that of 100 explosive tags going off at once rang throughout the training ground. When the explosion calmed down, only the charred ground remained of what were once 3 training dummies. An 8-year-old red-haired boy could be seen smiling in accomplishment at the destruction caused by the fire dragon. Yada! I finally mastered it, Naruto said to himself loudly. Not much had changed about Naruto. He still wore the same outfit which he wore 2 years ago, and the only noticeable difference about him was that he was a few inches taller, and instead of the 2 tomo in each Sharingan eye, he now had 3. Naruto had managed to fully mature his Sharingan 3 months ago whilst having a taijutsu spar with his father, well, a clone of his father to be precise. He had been so excited about it that he had constantly kept it active for almost an entire month, only turning it off when he was about to sleep or when he was inside the house. His mother, getting rather annoyed, had thoroughly reprimanded him about showing off his abilities and how a real ninja would keep their abilities a secret to surprise their enemies. He had stopped showing it off after that. Their parents had decided to tell his sisters a year before about his condition to his sisters. They had taken it rather well, and Hitomi had even gone as far as saying that no matter what anyone might say or do, they would always love him and would see him as their brother no matter what. All was not perfect in his life, however. It never was, ever since that day 2 years ago when he had asked permission to enter the Uchiha clan library. Sasuke had started giving hateful glares and would always ask him to be paired with him during the taijutsu spars in class, and when he lost, which was every time, he would become very angry and storm off. He did not know what his problem was, and honestly he did not care. To him, Sasuke was acting like a spoiled brat who couldn't take anyone being stronger than him. Another thing had happened at the academy. He did not know when or how it started. One day, the day he would forever curse. A lot of the girls at the academy had decided that he had the best boyfriend material and had suddenly developed a crush on him, leading to him having the one thing he had never dreamed of, having fangirls. And the leader of said group was none other than Ino Yamanaka, and her friend/rival was the leader of the Sasuke fan club, Sakura Haruno. He wondered what had happened to her. From what he could remember, she used to be such a quiet and shy girl, but now, she was different. The one thing that happened that made him smile was that he had discovered a lot of jutsu in the Uchiha clan library. Apparently they were ranked by how much you had mastered the Sharingan. ED ranked jutsu were accessible by those who activated the first stage of the Sharingan. CB ranked jutsu were accessible to those who had managed to activate the second stage. BA ranked jutsu were accessible to those who had fully matured their Sharingan. Though he had tried reading the S rank section and found that he could not, which made him wonder if perhaps there was another stage of the Sharingan that he did not know about, or maybe they were only accessible by a special password. When he had told his parents about how he had access to CB ranked jutsu from the library, both his parents had immediately stopped him from reading and trying to use those ninjutsu, stating that it was too dangerous for him to attempt such dangerous jutsu at such an early age. After a long session of him trying to convince them to allow him to try them, thank Kami for the puppy dog eye jutsu, they agreed. Though they put up a few rules for him to follow. First, he had to master 3 D-rank jutsu before he could attempt any C-rank jutsu. Secondly, he was only allowed to learn 5 C-rank jutsu, and would only be allowed to attempt a B-rank jutsu after he had fully mastered all the C-rank jutsu and getting an approval from both parents. And lastly, he was only allowed to learn 1 B-rank jutsu. He had immediately hugged his parents and run off to quickly learn the required D-rank jutsu. So not to make their daughters feel left out, both parents had decided to teach them each a jutsu and teach them more should they master the jutsu that they had taught them. And so after learning the 3 D-rank jutsu, which were replacement jutsu, clone jutsu, and the fire style cinder technique, which in all honesty did not take that long, about 3 weeks to master them all, he had told his parents and had gotten permission to learn the 5 C-rank jutsu. Surprisingly, he had chosen all 5 of them to be fire techniques. For some reason he found fire jutsu more appealing and much easier to master than other jutsu of different natures. That is where we find Naruto now, having just finished mastering his 3rd C-rank jutsu, which had taken him 2 months to muster. He looked at the sun and saw that it was just about set. Better go home before Kasen freaks out again, he thought to himself, and started back toward the village. As he walked down the streets of Konoha, he could not help but feel as though something was wrong. He quickened his pace to a jog to get home quickly. When Naruto got home, he still could not shake the bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. Entering the house, he was not all that surprised to get tackled to the ground by his sisters. He wondered when and if they would ever stop doing that. "Good evening to you too, Hitomi-chan." "Hikari-chan," he said as he gently pushed the 2 giggling girls off him. "Hello, Naruto," Hitomi greeted him first, with Hikari following after. "Hi, Naruto." They grabbed his hands, each taking one, and proceeded to drag towards the dining room where his mother and Shizen were seated chatting amongst themselves. "Good evening, Ka-chan." Nei-chan. Both women turned their heads and their faces brightened when they saw the three little red-haired children. Hello there, Naru-chan, how was your day? His mother asked after giving him a hug. It was great, I finally managed to master the dragon fire technique, he said proudly. His mother blinked in surprise before kissing him on the forehead, much to his chagrin and her amusement. Well then, congratulations, how about we go out for a little celebration? Let's all go get ramen, Kushina suggested happily. Naruto made a disgusted face, and his sisters cheered and Paki, she added after seeing his reaction. Shizen is paying, she added, walking out of the room with her children in tow. She laughed when she heard a small feminine shout. Hey! The following morning, like usual, Naruto woke from his sleep groaning, not wanting to get up, got into his usual clothes and walked downstairs, only to find his older sister Shizen sitting on the table watching his sisters gulp down 3 bowls of ramen each within seconds. Raising an eyebrow, usually it was their mother who sat with them every morning when they ate, he wondered where she was. A smile made its way across his face as he greeted everyone. Good morning. Everyone looked at him and smiled. Morning, Naruto-kun / Naru-kun, their voices chorused back. Where is Kaa-chan? He asked Shizen. She had to take care of something and will be back later today, Shizen responded, and Naruto nodded his head in understanding. It wasn't like this was the first this had happened. His mother often left on important meetings or emergencies. Shizen would babysit them. Today was Saturday, and there was no academy today, so Naruto headed outside to play on the swings where he knew his sisters would soon join him. Later that day, to say Naruto was shocked would have been an understatement. The Uchiha clan, one of the founding clans of Konoha, a clan known throughout the elemental nations for their nin / gen / tai / shuriken jutsu prowess, had been wiped out, in a single night, by one man. Itachi Uchiha had somehow managed to kill off his whole clan including his family, and had managed to escape before anyone managed to realize what he had done. To kill an entire clan in the span of a few hours at 16 years old, that made Naruto shudder. How strong and how ruthless was Itachi to be able to kill his own family and hundreds others. His head could not get around how a single person had managed to accomplish such a feat, killing an entire clan, in a village filled by Anbu and Jonin alike monitoring the village regularly, and yet he had done it. A small amount guilt started building within. He had felt that something was wrong the previous day, but he had ignored it. Maybe if he had told someone they would have checked. And oh, he shouted in his mind, it was not his fault. How was he supposed to know that something like this would happen? He was only 8, for crying out loud. That's what he told himself, trying to convince himself that there was nothing he could have done. He curled in his bed hearing his mother's whimpers through the walls as she mourned her best friend's death. Maybe he should have something, then things might have turned out differently. Time skipped 4 years later. Academy. Okay, class, settle down, Irika stated loudly, but no one seemed to have heard him as they were all preoccupied with their own conversations. Getting irritated, his head enlarged in a comically large way, and on top of his lungs he shouted, "Shut up, you little brats." His voice boomed throughout the entire class. Everyone became silent and Irika continued, "Thank you. Now, as was about to say, today is the day where some and hopefully all of you will pass and receive the rank of genin." He saw many students giving each other confident looks and the majority of them showing a lot of excitement. However, before you can be ranked a genin, you will have to pass the graduation exam. The exam will consist of 3 phases. The first portion will be a written exam, AWW. The second will be a taijutsu spar, and the final part will be a ninjutsu test, where you will be asked to the 3 ninjutsu you were taught here at the academy. The once confident looks of some of the students had turned to that of uncertainty and nervousness. Yahoo! This is going to be piece of cake, right? Akamaru, a brown-haired boy wearing a gray hooded fur-lined coat with a white small dog on top of his head, said. The little dog barked in agreement, making the boy smirk confidently. Quiet down, Kiba. Okay, everyone, you may begin when I place the question paper on your desk. 1 hour later. Okay, everyone, put your pencils down, and please line up outside for the second portion of the exam. When the students got outside, they found Mizuki standing inside of a ring, with circle drawn on the ground by white chalk. He beckoned for the students to separate into 2 groups, boys and girls. Okay, then for a pass you will have to last for 3 minutes within this ring. I will increase my speed as time goes on. The time limit is 10 minutes. Everyone nodded their heads. The first person to go against Mizuki was a civilian girl by the name of Ami. Watch me, Naruto-kun, she shouted, making said boy shiver in slight fear. He had had many close encounters with that girl. She with her 2 lackeys would often chase him, wanting to get a date or sometimes, shiver, a kiss. Fortunately, thanks to his prior training, he was much faster and had more stamina than them and always managed to escape from their clutches. His best friend Shino turned out to be a great buffer for fangirls as they found him wired and creepy and would always run away or avoid him. They would leave Naruto alone as long as he was with him. When the match began, Ami seemed to be doing great, but after 3 minutes her stamina had run out, and she had forfeited the match, ending with a time of 3 minutes and 43 seconds. A/N. I'm just going to skip the matches and just give you the results. Ami 343, Haruno Sakura 310, Yamanaka Ino 356, Hyuga Hinata 513, Namikaze Hikari 753, Namikaze Hitomi 801. After that, Naruto zoned out, not at all interested in the other matches. There was a 15 minutes break as Mizuki regained his energy before it was the boys' turn. Abirame Shino 533, Akimichi Choji 412, Inazuka Kiba 722, Namikaze Naruto 934, Naruto Shikamaru 3:00. Everyone including Naruto's sweat dropped. Okay students, the final portion of the exam will start in the 30 minutes times. Be sure be in class when the bell rings, Irika stated before going back to the class and marking the answers to the first portion of the exam. Naruto sighed when he saw Ino giving him a wink. He walked to his usual spot where he sat with Shino. After the 30 minutes lunch break had passed, all the students returned to their class and waited for the final part of the graduation exam. Shino, Aburame, and so each student were called to do the Academy 3 as they were dubbed. Surprisingly, all the students passed the exam and proudly wearing their new Konoha forehead protector. Congratulations all of you for passing. Your teams will be announced in a week's time. See you then. Irika looked at his class one more time and for a second saw all the students transform into their young 6-year form and 7-year-olds. He blinked and saw that they were back to their normal 12 years old. Must have been something in my eye, he thought as he walked down the hall, not noticing the single tear sliding down his face. 1 week later, Naruto looked at his sensei and was a bit surprised not to see Mizuki-sensei with him. He blinked when he remembered hearing his parents talk about how someone had tried to break into the Hokage's library and steal the scroll of seals and had been caught by Anbu before he could even break in. He inwardly huffed, only a fool would try to steal something as important as that scroll and not think it would be guarded. Unfortunately, Mizuki won't be with us today. He had a mission to go to, Irika announced, rubbing the back of his head nervously. Instantly everyone perked at the mention of a mission and Irika inwardly cursed. What kind of mission, sensei? Sakura was the one to ask. A secret mission. Sorry, I can't tell you about it. It is against the law to disclose important mission statement. He sighed in relief when he saw that all the students believed him while almost all the students, Shikamaru, was asleep. Shino's face was stoic as ever, so he really couldn't tell, and Naruto was looking at him with a raised eyebrow showing he clearly did not believe him. Of course his father is the son of the Hokage, so he must know the truth. He glanced at Naruto's siblings and raised an eyebrow when he saw they, like the rest of the class, believed his excuse, though that doesn't explain why they believe me. Anyways, I will now announce the teams. Team 1. Naruto stopped listening then, and instead chose to rest his head a bit on the desk and dozed off. It was Shino who noticed that his friend was sleeping and woke up. I believe that our names are to be called. You should pay attention, Shino said after Naruto had woken up. Thanks, he mumbled under his breath. Team 7 under the leadership of Kakashi Hatake will consist of Harino Sakura, Namikaze Hikari and Inazuka Kiba. Team 8 under Kurenai Yuhi will consist of Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino and Namikaze Naruto. Team 9 is still in circulation, so Team 10 will consist of Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino and Akimichi Choji. Naruto blinked. What about Hitomi? Due to there being an extra student left without a team, they will be apprenticed by one of the Jonin and will join other teams regularly. Irika answered their question before they could ask him. Everyone looked at Hitomi, who looked dejected at not being placed in the same team with any or her siblings or any of her friends. Hitomi, your Jonin sensei will be waiting for you at training ground 14. As for the rest of you, your Jonin sensei will be here to collect you in 1 hour. Good luck and remember your teamwork. And with that, Irika left the class. After Irika had left, all the new Genins got out of the class and sat with their new teammates, trying to establish a friendly relationship amongst themselves and get to know each other better. With Team 8, Team 8 sat on the bench where Naruto had first met Shino. This had become their usual meeting place to sit during the breaks. They sat there in a very awkward silence, as neither team members were willing to say anything first. Surprisingly, it was Shino who broke the silence. I believe it would be in our best interest to introduce ourselves. Why? To better know each other and know our strengths and weakness. The other two members of Team 8 nodded their heads in agreement. My name is Shino Aburame. I like learning about new insects, looking after my hive, and Naruto-san, I dislike those who kill insects and people who show prejudice towards my clan members. My dream is to one day become the clan head and make my clan proud. I specialize in tracking and mid-range fighting. Shino finished, not once showing an outside emotion. He looked at Hinata and she knew he wanted her to introduce herself. She gulped before nervously speaking up. Hi, my name is Hyuga Hinata. I like cinnamon rolls, my family and my friends. I dislike people who look down on others and senseless violence. My dream is to one day become a respected kunoichi and rejoin my family. I specialize in tracking and I a short-range fighter, she finished and bowing her head at the very end. Naruto looked at them for a bit and inwardly sighed when he saw Shino glaring at him from behind his glasses. He knew what he was about to do. Sighing inwardly again, he spoke. My name is Namikaze Naruto. I like my family, my friend Shino, training in Paki. I dislike those who hurt my family, friends and those who make fun of Paki. My dream is to surpass my father, all the previous Hokages. I specialize in close and mid-range fighting. Naruto introduced himself lastly. They sat there for a while. The uncomfortable atmosphere lifted after their introductions. The bell rang and the new team made their way to the class and meet their new sensei. Inside the classroom, after a minute of waiting, the Jonin senseis of each team started coming in and taking their genins with them. After the Jonin sensei of Team 6 had left with his genins, the door opened, and in walked a young woman with long black hair that reached her upper back. She had very distinctive red eyes that looked almost like the Sharingan with a ring in them, though without the tomos. She was wearing a red mesh armor blouse with only the left sleeve visible, which resembled bandages with a pattern on it similar to thorns. Her hands and upper thighs were wrapped in bandages. Ultimately she was a very beautiful woman, and Kiba, who had seen her, had whistled loudly and even drooled at her form. "Teammate, come with me," she called out seriously with a stoic face and turned around to walk out of the class, not before giving Kiba a very cold glare as she walking out, with Teammate close behind her. Training Ground 8. Teammates stood in front of their new Jonin sensei, who was standing in front of them looking at all of them with a critical eye. She held her gaze for another few seconds before she smiled at them and gave them all an approving smile. "Okay team, since you have already introduced yourselves," all their eyes widened, including Naruto. "How? I will introduce myself. My name is Kurina Yuhi. I like coming up with new genjutsu techniques and hanging out with my friends. I dislike perverts and people who think genjutsu is inferior to other techniques. My dream is to one day become a world-renowned genjutsu mistress. As a Jonin I have many abilities, but my speciality lies within genjutsu. I am going to tell you now that none of you are genin yet." She smirked a bit when she saw the young genins almost shout out in shock but held it back. "You said yet? Does that mean there is something else required for us to do in order to become genin?" Naruto asked with his eyes narrowed a bit. Kurina's smirk grew. "Very good observation," she praised him before continuing with her speech. "You are right, there is something else that you have to do in order to truly become genin. You are not told this at the academy, but there is an additional test that each Jonin gives to their genin to determine whether they are ready to be genin or should spend another year at the academy. Each test differs from Jonin to Jonin." "What kind of test are you going to give us, sensei?" Hinata asked nervously. "I'm glad you asked," she said, taking out a hand watch and placing it on the ground. They all looked at her in confusion. "Your test is to locate and detain me within 1 hour. Should the time run out, and you have not done so, you will fail and be sent back to the academy," she said seriously. "Your test begins now. Your test begins now." As soon as those came out from her mouth, she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. The 3 academy graduates looked at each other, not saying a word. "Hinata, can you tell me if you can see her?" Naruto asked, taking command of the team. "Byakugan!" Hinata shouted. The veins around her eyes bulged and her pupilless eyes gained a more defined look. A second later her eyes widened a bit before she spoke up. "She's hiding inside of a tree, 100 meters north from here. We need to come up with a plan. If we were to go against her separately we'd fail. Why? She is a Jonin, has more experience than us, and not to mention we are all freshly out of the academy," Shino explained, and both teammates could not help but agree at that sound logic. They stood there in silence once more, each thinking on how best to approach the situation. "If I can distract her, Shino, you can drain her chakra with your insects, and Hinata, when Shino has drained her chakra and she is disoriented, you can get in close and finish her off with your gentle fist." It was a sound plan, but of course nothing ever went right on the first try. Hinata looked a bit startled when Naruto mentioned what her role would be. Naruto glanced at her through the corner of his eye. "She's nervous," he thought. That was not good. When people were nervous they tended to hesitate, and when people hesitated they put their team in danger. He sighed inwardly. Kami, he hated doing this, and he was not good at helping people emotionally. "Where are Hitomi and Hikari when you need them?" he groaned inwardly. His sisters were more open with their emotions than he was, and stilling his resolve he forced a smile. "Don't worry, Hinata-san, we'll pass this test. As long as we work together as a team," he said confidently. "Naruto is right. As long as we work together as a team, we will pass," Shino added. Hinata looked at her new teammates, and seeing how confident and supportive her teammates were being almost made her want to cry. She looked at them, and with a determined look in her eyes she nodded her head. "Hi," she said, trying to sound as confident as she could be. "Has she moved?" Naruto asked seriously, turning back to the matter at hand. Hinata activated her Byakugan once more and shook her head. "No, she's still hiding in the same place." They looked at each other once more before jumping into the trees and headed towards their sensei. With Kurinai hid patiently inside of a tall oak tree. She knew that her students would easily find her, which was the whole point. She would test their tracking and observe their teamwork skills, if any. She felt a strong chakra signature heading towards her, and was disappointed since the person was alone. No teamwork, she thought. A red-haired figure landed on the ground a few meters in front of the tree she was in. He's either very arrogant in thinking he can take me on his own, or the other two are hiding somewhere. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed two other chakra signatures hiding closely. It's probably the later. Going through a few hand seals, she looked at her target and smirked. Demonic illusion, false surrounding. Naruto landed on the ground, where he could sense Kurinai hiding in the tree in front of him. His sensory ability limited him to 70 meters, 230 feet, only. When he had first discovered he could sense people, he had tried to develop it more in order to extend the range, but honestly he never got around to it. He was either busy with trying to master his Sharingan or learning the fire jutsu from the Uchiha clan library. So the time to properly learn and master his sensory ability never came, thus the limited sensory range. He was a bit surprised when the environment suddenly changed, and instead of standing in front of the tree in a forest he found himself standing in his old parents' house, and it was night time. And to finish it off, Kurinai thought, going through a few hand seals once more. Demonic illusion. Vision of hell, she whispered and waited to see the results of her jutsu. Naruto found himself lying on the ground, with a kunai sticking in his stomach, and his sisters crying over his bleeding form. His eyes widened in horror. It can't be. The two men slowly descended upon his oblivious sisters, and ever so slowly raised their kunai, and in slow motion plunging their kunai into his sister's back. Their eyes widened, and slowly the life in them dimmed until they were dull blue instead of their bright youthful, shiver crystal blue. He let out an inhuman scream, H. Before his eyes rolled into the back of his head, and he promptly fell to the ground, unconscious. Inside the tree, Kurenai's eyes widened a bit, before narrowing in suspicion. That shouldn't have been that easy. From what I read, Naruto is the most talented student in his graduation class. He should have been able to break free from that genjutsu easily. More importantly, why didn't he activate his Sharingan? Her suspicions were proven correct when her instincts told her to dodge. Instantly she jumped away from the branch where she was standing on, and a second later 5 kunai struck the area where she had been hiding. She looked around trying to pinpoint where the attack had come from and found no one. She looked at the downed form of Naruto, and was surprised when he crumbled into dust. An Earth clone, she thought, both surprised and impressed. PHSSSS, that was the only warning she got before the branch where she had moved to, in order to avoid the kunai, exploded from the use of several explosive tags. When the smoke cleared, only a little piece of a log could be seen, indicating a substitution. An unscathed Kurenai crouched on a new branch, looking at where the explosion had gone off. That was close. Not close enough to have seriously hurt her, but close. He's good, she thought. Looking around, trying to locate the young red-haired boy, she could feel several chakra signatures surrounding the area she occupied. Very good. He was using clones to hide his presence, and was attacking from multiple angles. She looked up at the sun, calculating that only 27 minutes had passed. Not much time left. Time to take this up a notch, she whispered to herself, taking out a kunai. From his hiding spot, the real Naruto looked at his 2 teammates. Get ready, it's almost time. Hinata, as soon as you see an opening, attack. Ignoring the nervous nod she gave in return, Naruto jumped from their hiding spot and landed on the ground, in order to gain clear view for an attack. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them a fully matured Sharingan could be seen. He flashed through a few hand seals and, taking a deep breath, fire style, fireball jutsu, and blew out a huge ball of fire that easily tore through the forest. Upon reaching the tree where he had sensed Kurenai, the fireball erupted in a huge fiery explosion that blew away many of the trees and surrounding landmass. When she had felt him channeling a large amount of chakra in his lungs, Kurenai had done what her instincts had screamed for her to do, run away, and she had not regretted it. When the explosion had died down, she was surprised at how much damage the explosion had caused. And to think he is only a genin jumping down from the tree she was in, and now standing a few feet in front of him. She looked at him and was surprised to see him only a bit winded from all the jutsu he had used so far. His Sharingan was spinning madly before slowing down. Now his slowly Sharingan was looking at her, as though he was seizing her up, but then again, considering who he is and who his parents are, I shouldn't be all that surprised, seeing as he was not going to initiate the attack. Kurenai held her kunai in a reverse grip and was gearing up to attack when she suddenly felt her strength being sapped away. What the dash, she tried moving but found she could not, so she forcefully turned her head aside and saw Shino standing there, with his arms stretched and a horde of insects flying out from the sleeves of his jersey. You're within my range of division, she heard a soft voice whisper and easily recognized it as Hinata. Before she could even utter a single word, 8 trigrams, 32 palms, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms. She felt her chakra being closed off and more of it being drained from her. She blinked, too surprised to even react. She had completely forgotten about the other 2. Even worse, she had lost to a group of genin. Fresh out the academy genin. Her, a seasoned jonin defeated by mere academy graduates. This test was supposed to test how well they worked as team, and they were supposed to be in no shape or form expected to defeat her. She tiredly looked at Naruto, her strength almost completely drained from her, and he still had his Sharingan active, looking at her expectantly. She had underestimated him. No, she had underestimated all of them. Kami, if Anko learned that she had lost to a group of genin, fresh genin even, she would never hear the end of it. A smile made its way across her face. Congratulations, you managed to both track and capture me. You exceeded my expectations, and for that they all tensed you pass. Okay, not the reaction she was going for. With Hitomi. Hitomi grumpily made her towards training ground 14 with an angry pout on her face. It was not fair, she thought, angrily stomping her foot on the ground. Why wasn't she placed with any of the other teams? Better yet, why out of the entire academy students was she the one not to have a team? She was not even at the bottom of the class, far from it actually. Sure, written exams were not her strong point, but still she was ranked 4th in the class. As she got closer and closer to the training ground where she would meet her to be Jonin sensei, Hitomi's mood turned sour and sour. Arriving at the training ground, she almost screamed in frustration when she found the training ground empty, and no sign of her Jonin sensei. Great, even my Jonin sensei is not here, she grumbled loudly. Something hard hit her forehead. Having not expected the attack, the object, which she identified as Pebble, hit her head on. Bringing her hands to the now sore forehead, all her previous anger, which had calmed down somewhat, skyrocketed, and much like her mother, she exploded. What fuck, she started but froze when she looked up at who she was about to give a piece of her mind to. KSN. There, standing on top of a branch in a tree a few feet from her, was Kushina Uzumaki, arms crossed with disapproval look on her face. Instead of her usual clothes she wore every day, her hair was tied up in a high ponytail with strands framing the sides of her face. She was also wearing standard Konoha flak jacket, showing her position as a jonin, over a black short-sleeved shirt and black form-fitting pants that reached her calves. Language, Hitomi, Kushina chided. Jumping down from the tree she was standing on, she approached her still frozen daughter. Breaking from her frozen stupor, Hitomi pointed an accusing finger at her mother. "You're my jonin-sensei!" she shouted out, obviously surprised. But who could blame her? It was not common that a parent teach their own child /rin for obvious reasons. For one, the parent might avoid taking dangerous missions trying to protect their child. Another reason, which was the most important, was that should their child get in danger, the parent would instantly drop everything and try to save them, regardless of whether they were on an important mission or are guarding important cargo/client. So it was very, very rare for parents to lead their own children, especially in a hidden village like Konoha. "Yes, but whenever we are on duty you refer to me as Kushina-sensei." "Alright," Kushina explained, ignoring her daughter's surprised yell. She had expected her to react like this after all. Hitomi just nodded dumbly, her mind still processing what was going on. Regaining some of her composure, Hitomi asked the first question that came to her mind. "But you're my Ka-san," she stuttered out. "And now I'm your jonin-sensei Tebane," Kushina said excitedly, unconsciously adding her verbal tick at the end of her sentence. Upon realizing what she had said, she sweat dropped and coursed under her breath. Turning serious, Kushina looked at her daughter and spoke up. "Now Hitomi, I'm sure you are wondering why you were the one chosen to not be in a genin team. More importantly, why I am your jonin-sensei." Seeing how serious her mother was, Hitomi gulped audibly and nodded her head. "What I'm about to tell you is very important, and you should not tell anyone except those people you really trust, okay?" Now Hitomi was worried. What could possibly be so important that she could not tell anyone but those she trusted, and what did it have to do with her? Something inside of her told her that whatever it was, she was not going to like it, and her mother's serious demeanor helped confirm it. "Hi," Hitomi responded nervously. Kushina took a small calming breath and, taking a small moment to check if anyone was listening, finding no one and satisfied that nobody was close, she spoke. "Please don't interrupt me until I finish, okay?" Kushina said with her voice becoming softer. Hitomi did not respond. Taking this as a cue to continue, Kushina started talking. "In the academy you were told that when the Kyuubi attacked, the third Hokage sacrificed himself using a forbidden jutsu to seal it within the death god's stomach, saving the village." She paused and Hitomi hesitantly nodded her head, not understanding what any of that had to do with her. Kushina took another deep breath and continued. "That is not the truth," Hitomi gasped. "What?" She was about to continue saying more, however her mother's glare quickly shut her up. "As I was saying, that is not true. It is impossible for a mortal to drag something as powerful as the Kyuubi into the Shinigami's stomach, so the third Hokage did what he could at the time. Sacrificing himself, he sealed the Kyuubi into a newborn infant, whose chakra pathways had not fully been formed." She paused and looked directly into Hitomi's eyes. "He sealed the Kyuubi within you." Silence. Hitomi froze. Her face went blank, no emotion could be seen on her face. The entire training ground became silent. The trees frozen, not even the blow of the wind could be heard. Kushina could swear she had a leaf fall and hit the ground. The air became very tense, so tense it was almost suffocating. After what seemed like eternity, for Kushina, Hitomi finally reacted. "Seal it within me!" she screamed out. Her breath became labored, and tears started gather in the corner of her eyes. "Why me?" she whispered out so slowly that Kushina almost did not hear her, but she did. Taking a step closer, Kushina hugged her daughter, though Hitomi did not respond to the hug. Her arms just hung to her sides. Slowly her shoulders started to shake. The tears in her eyes started to freely flow down her face. Kushina just continued hugging her daughter as she continued to cry, not minding that her clothes were getting soaked from the tears. After a few minutes, Hitomi finally calmed down enough for Kushina to talk to. "He had no choice. The Kyuubi attacked so suddenly that none of us could have prepared for it. So the third did what he could to save the village," Kushina explained, and Hitomi, whom she was still hugging, had retuned her hug sometime when she was crying, nodded her head. "What about the Kyuubi? Will it ever break out?" At this, Kushina chuckled. Hitomi looked up from her position quizzically, wondering what she had said that made her mother laugh in a situation like this. "Trust me, the Kyuubi is safely sealed and won't break out. Not only is it sealed with the strongest seal ever created, but also both me and your father are Fuinjutsu experts. So trust me when I say this, the Kyuubi will never break out," she said reassuringly. They continued talking, with Hitomi asking questions about the Kyuubi and Kushina answering them, trying her best to set her daughter's fears. After about an hour of talking, Hitomi asked the one question that was still confusing her. "Ka-chan? MHH? There's still one thing I don't understand though." Kushina raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What's that? I get that the Kyuubi is sealed in me and everything. What I don't get, however, is why you are my jonin-sensei." Kushina blinked and almost face-palmed. How could she forget? She laughed sheepishly, rubbing the back of her head in embarrassment. Sorry, I forgot about that." Hitomi's sweat dropped. "Seriously? The reason why I was chosen to be your jonin-sensei is because I can help you control the Kyuubi's chakra." Hitomi's eyes widened slightly. "You can? How?" Kushina puffed her chest proudly and, closing her eyes for a dramatic effect, a second later golden chakra chains burst out from the ground. They hang loosely in the air, still connected to the ground. Hitomi could only stare mouth open, doing a perfect impression of a gaping fish. That's so cool!" She shouted with stars in her eyes, but then her awestruck expression turned to that of confusion. "That still doesn't explain how that will help me control the Kyuubi's chakra, though," Kushina smirked. "These are chakra chains. They are only accessible to me and are nearly indestructible. They can be used for various purposes like direct combating or physically restraining targets. Even tailed beasts," she explained proudly. Hitomi's eyes widened slightly, now understanding what her mother was saying. With her chakra chains she could restrict her when and hopefully never she lost control. "Wow, so only you can use them," Hitomi said with a frown on her face. Kushina looked at her daughter's disappointed face with an understanding look on her face. She could understand where her daughter was coming from. If the situation were reversed, she too would have been unhappy to learn that she couldn't do what her parents could do. "Well, technically not really. Just because either you or your sister and brother have not been able to use the same chakra chains as me doesn't mean you won't be able to one day," Kushina said, trying to bring up Hitomi's spirits. Instantly Hitomi's eyes had a hopeful glint in them. "Now then, normally I would have to give you an additional test to determine whether you are ready to be a genin or not, but since there is only you and no one else, I'll just skip the test," Kushina said off-headedly, much to Hitomi's joy. "Now let's go get us a mission. Since you are Jutsu a genin, we'll start with D-rank missions," she smirked. She couldn't wait to see the look on her daughter's face when she discovered what D-ranked missions were truly about. Hitomi's earlier happiness was suddenly replaced by that of nervousness. She felt as though 1,000 souls screamed out to her, warning her for something that was to come. "I can't wait for you to meet Tora," Kushina said evilly. Hitomi froze. Her mother wasn't going to make her do dangerous missions, was she? And who the heck was Tora? Whatever it was, she was going to kick its ass. She was Hitomi Namikaze. Her mother was one of the strongest women in the world. Her father was the 4th Hokage and both her grandparents were 2 of the 3 legendary Sannin. Nothing could scare her, especially not this Tora person/thing. Poor Hitomi. If only she knew. Later at the Senju compound, a tired and battered Hitomi walked into the Senju compound with an angry snarl on her face, which had several claw marks and a blue swelling eye. Upon seeing her, Shizen rushed to her in worry. However, Hitomi just stomped past her, muttering something about evil cats. Shizen looked at Kushina quizzically. "What was that about?" Kushina just chuckled humorously. "Tora," she said, simply walking past Shizen, who blinked before gaining an understanding look on her face, which quickly turned into that of sympathy. Tora, aka the Hellcat, was known by nearly every ninja in Konoha who had the unfortunate luck of meeting her. Even Shizen had had her run with that rebellious cat until this date. Just the mention of Tora made her cringe. She unconsciously reached for her face, rubbing phantom wounds that had long been inflicted by Tora when she had tried to catch her back then. Shaking her head in sympathy, Shizen continued what she had been doing before. The following morning. It was early in the morning. The sun's rays barely passing over the mountain, the dew on the leaves and grass was still visible, and Team 7 was waiting impatiently for their Jonin sensei to arrive. "Where the heck is this guy?" Kiba screamed out, stomping his foot on the ground in frustration. For the 100th time, "Kiba, no," Sakura shouted back. "I mean, not only did he arrive 3 hours late yesterday and gave us some lame excuse about why he was late, he also told us to be here at 5 a.m. and still doesn't show up. What kind of Jonin does that? Man, now I wish I had been placed in the same team with Naruto and Shino. At least their Jonin was on time. Not only that, but she is very, and I mean very hot." He ended his rant with a drool at the end, only to receive a fist to the face, courtesy of an angry, fuming Sakura. "Pervet!" she shouted in female fury, sending the drooling Kiba flying and hitting a tree. Surprisingly, a second later he was up and in Sakura's face. "What the hell, you crazy bitch!" That hurt. Faster than he could blink, a fist hit him on top of his head, sending him crushing into the unforgiving hard ground. "Call me?" Sakura asked darkly, putting an extra emphasis on each word with her head down and her hair covering her face. Kiba, who was now lying on the ground, did not see this and mumbled a response that sealed his fate. "Be bitch!" Sakura exploded. She started punching the still down Kiba into the ground until half his body was buried deep into the ground and his legs raised high into the air. The only sign to show that he was still alive was the constant twitching of his legs. Dusting herself, Sakura huffed and turned around to see a whimpering Akamaru, whom, upon seeing that she was looking at him, run away as fast as his little legs could carry him. Sakura smirked and walked towards the other female in their team, and her smirk turned into a frown when she saw Hikari. Hikari had not been paying attention to any of her teammates since arriving at the training ground. Her mind was preoccupied with something else, more specifically what their parents had told them about Hitomi last night. It had been a shocker to her and her brother when they learned that Hitomi was a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, no less. At first she had been afraid that sooner or later the Kyuubi would break free and kill them all. However, her father had quickly intervened and put her fears to rest by explaining to them how the seal was safe and the chances of the Kyuubi breaking free being impossible. After that, the 3 children had spent some time talking to each other, mostly her and Hikari, before going to bed. But Hikari did not sleep. Something kept her up for the majority of the night. As stupid and ridiculous as it might sound, Hikari was jealous. Not for not being the one to get the Kyuubi sealed within her, mind you. No, Hikari was jealous because unlike Naruto and Hitomi, she did not receive some kind of curse/power upon birth. As silly as might may sound, she felt left out when she was told that Naruto had been injected with the DNA of Madara and Hashirama. She had felt sorry for her brother, and that had been that. Now, however, her sister too had had the QB sealed within her, and that changed everything. She now felt like the odd man out. Hikari, huh? Was her intelligent reply. She saw the worried look on her friend's face and wondered for how long she had been thinking for. I've been calling you for over a minute now. Are you feeling okay? Sakura asked worriedly, her personality in direct contrast to what it had been like a few minutes ago. Oh yeah, I'm fine, just have something on my mind, that's all, Hikari said off-headedly. Sakura looked at her friend with narrowed eyes before frowning. Oak, if you're sure. Hikari just nodded her head. So how long do you think Sensei is going to make us wait for? Sakura asked, changing the subject. Hikari's brows frowned a bit, and she sighed loudly and hit her forehead with her hand. How I could forget, Kakashi is always late for everything. Ka-san is always complaining about his always late for every single thing. So how long is he usually late for? Sakura asked. He couldn't be that bad, could he? 3 hours, Hikari groaned out. We might as well get comfortable, Sakura said in a defeated tone, walking towards a tree nearby and slumping down with Hikari right behind her. 3 hours later. Yo, sorry I'm late guys, a black cat crossed my path and I had to take the long way around, Kakashi said, appearing in a smoke explosion with an eye smile. Not hearing anything, he curiously opened his lone eye, uncovered eye, and sweat dropped at what he saw. Hikari and Sakura were snoozing away under a tree, and Kiba. He had to double-take at that. The top section of Kiba was buried into the ground and his dog, Akamaru, was fruitlessly trying to dig him out. What a very interesting team. Target is in my sight, a voice said on the radio. Wait for the others to get within striking position, a female voice responded back. They were silent before another voice spoke up on the radio. I can see the T-target. A few seconds and another voice spoke. I am within range. Okay then, teammate, move in. Instantly the sounds of fighting/scrunching could be heard. There were a few shuffles before everything went silent. Report. Target captured, an annoyed voice replied of the radio. 3 figures walked out from the bushes, all of them with a few scratch marks somewhere on their bodies. Kurenai nodded head and looked away from her team, hiding the small laugh that was about to escape from her lips. Teammate walked into the Hokage's office with the fighting Tora being held tightly by a very annoyed Naruto, who looked just about ready to kill the struggling cat at any given second. Teammate reporting in for a mission success, Hokage-sama, Kurenai said, bowing her head slightly and receiving a smile from the Hokage, who nodded his head. A woman who had been sitting on a chair in the office suddenly sprung up from her seat and with speeds that a normal civilian should not possess, plucked the now shaking Tora from Naruto and started to squeeze the life out of it with her hug. Now I understand why it was fighting to stay away so much. Poor kitty. Bzzzt. Sure, I will not let her take any of you. Oh my poor Tora, I was so worried. Never run away from mama again, the woman cooed, rubbing the poor cat to her face. Ignoring the scene in front of him, the Hokage addressed the team. Congratulations, teammate. Will you be taking any more missions? Kurenai looked at her team. They were already done with today's training and needed some rest. Catching Tora had not been easy. No, Hokage-sama, that will be all. The Hokage nodded his head, and teammate proceeded to walk out of the office. Okay, teammate, that will be all for today, Kurenai said as they walked down the hallway. They all nodded their heads, and upon exiting the Hokage building were about to go their separate ways when Shino spoke up. Naruto, Shino called out as Naruto was about to walk away. Naruto stopped and looked back at his teammates. They were still standing at the exit door, and raising an eyebrow he turned around and walked back to them. Yes? Naruto responded when he was close to them. Hinata looked nervous and hesitated before speaking. We are going to eat at a restaurant, and wanted to ask if you would go with us. She blushed at the end and looked down to hide her blushing face. For a few minutes Naruto was silent. He looked at his teammates. A part of him wanted to go, but another part of him reminded him that he had some training to do today. He was close to mastering that new fire jutsu. Maybe he could go out with them next time. I'm sorry I can't, there's something I need to do today, Naruto said with a small sigh, earning a frown from his teammates. Some other time then? Shino said with a hopeful hint in his voice. He had been hoping that his best friend would come with them. Lately he had been seeing less and less of him. This was his opportunity to spend some time with him. Yes, some other time, Naruto said, and with that he walked away from his disappointed teammates. All 3 of them did not notice an invisible figure hidden behind a genjutsu watching them. Kurenai frowned as she looked at Naruto. Her team was not bonding together, as she had hoped. Naruto walked towards the empty training ground. He always used to get some private training. The training ground was near the Uchiha clan compound. It was a small clearing surrounded by several trees. At the end of the clearing there was a lake. Closing his eyes only to open them a second later, though this time with his Sharingan activated, he walked towards the center of the clearing. He closed his eyes once more, this time in concentration. Taking in a few calming breaths now, he shouted in his mind, at speeds that would make a few jonin gape. He opened his eyes with his hands flashing through hand seals in a blur. Fire release. Hellfire clap. At first nothing happened. It seemed as though the jutsu had gone wrong, but then the temperature in the area started to rise. A circle composed of pure fire formed on the ground surrounding Naruto before it rose until it was covering him completely. With a final clap, the wave of destructive fire spread out in a circle, searing through anything it came into contact with. The fire spread for about 9 meters from Naruto before burning out. In the center from where the fire had come from, an unscathed Naruto stood panting slightly, looking at the destruction caused by his jutsu. The once beautiful green small clearing was now covered in black scorch marks and ashes from burned grass and a few shrubs. 9 meters, Naruto thought with a slight frown on his face. The jutsu he had just done was an A-rank chakra-consuming defensive jutsu. From what he had read, the diameter of the jutsu was 15 meters from the caster. So far the best he had been able to push for was 7 meters, 9 counting today. Now one might wonder how and why Naruto knew an A-rank jutsu. The reason was simple actually. When his parents had told him the limit amount of jutsu that he was allowed to learn, Naruto had made sure to copy as many jutsu as he could. It was not to spite his parents or anything. No, the reason he had done it is because he had reasoned to himself that there might come a day and time when he would need to able to cast one of those jutsu, either to protect himself or his family. Call it paranoia, but after that day they had almost been killed. He was not taking any chances. Thank Kami for the photographic memory of the Sharingan. Otherwise he would never have been able to remember any of those jutsu. He was thankful that he had been copying those jutsu because had he not he would never have been able to after the Uchiha clan had been massacred. The whole place had been locked, and no one was allowed to enter the compound. All those jutsu and information lost, he thought sadly. After mastering the jutsu he had chosen to learn, when his parents had given the chance to learn only a selected amount of jutsu, Naruto had decided to experiment, or so to speak, with the other jutsu he had copied. It had started as more of an act of curiosity of a little boy wanting to see just how far he could go with what he knew. That soon turned into him wanting to master everything in his knowledge to not only make his dream a reality but to also protect himself, and most importantly to protect his family. Of course his parents didn't know about what he was doing, so he had trained those jutsu in secret, and he prayed to Kami that they never find out, especially his mother. There was a very, and I mean very few things that scared Naruto, and those things were ghosts, if Pocky was to ever be stopped produced, but most of an angry Kushina. Clap, clap, I must say Naruto-kun, I'm impressed, a voice said a few feet behind him. A voice he instantly recognized all too well. Naruto froze. His legs started shaking slightly, sweat poured down his forehead. It can't be! Kami, let it not be her, anyone but her, he prayed, and with very much reluctance he slowly turned his head, and what he saw made him whimper. There, standing with a sweet devilish smile on her face, was none other than his mother. He backed away from her, his heart now beating so fast and so hard he could actually hear it. So Naruto-kun, mind telling me what that was? Naruto gulped audibly. Kami must really hate me, he whimpered. Ka-san, funny seeing you here, what can I do for you? He chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head. Kushina inwardly laughed. She loved watching her son break from his usual serious exterior and actually acts like a normal child. That was why she made sure to get him as railed up as often as she could. She held her serious expression, wanting to see for how long he would take before he broke. Nothing much, what was that? She asked again, pointing at the charred ground and adding a bit of ki to make him sweat even more. Naruto wanted to shout out in frustration. Of all the people to catch him, why her? Why couldn't it be his father? His sisters? His grandmother? Anyone but her. How had she found him anyways? He had made sure to find the most private training ground around. He was sure that no one save a few ANBU and some members of the Uchiha clan members knew about this training ground. How had she gotten so close to him without his notice? His sensing range was not that wide, but it was wide enough for him to notice when people are close. Well, she is a Jonin and an S-ranked Kunoichi, he answered his own question. Calming down just enough to face her, Naruto braced himself and spoke. A jutsu? He said, testing the waters. I can see that. What kind of jutsu? Her ki increased slightly. A fire jutsu? A tick mark appeared on Kushina's forehead. What kind of fire jutsu? An A-ranked jutsu, Naruto admitted, finally preparing himself for what he knew would be the scolding of his life. Imagine his surprise when, instead of shouting or a fist to the head, his mother moved in front of him and gave him the biggest hug she had ever given him. What? Naruto stuttered in surprise after she had let him go. You mastered an A-rank jutsu, silly, she giggled. Not even I could do that when I was your age. Oh, this calls for a celebration. Let me treat you to as many pokey sticks as you want. Naruto's mind, which had shut down from shock, finally rebooted enough for him to talk. But aren't you angry? Shouldn't she be angry? He had basically gone behind their backs and did what they had told him not to do, learn more jutsu. Of course not. Why would I be angry when my little boy has just done something as amazing as this? She waved her hand indicating the damage done by the fire. I went behind your backs, he said blankly with a deadpan expression. Well, we knew you would learn other jutsu, so you technically didn't do anything wrong. You knew? You had access to an interlibrary full of powerful ninjutsu jutsu. We would be stupid to think that you wouldn't try and learn more. But why didn't you stop me? Kushina smiled. We wanted you to learn to gain your own strength without anyone to hold you back, and we were hoping that you would be able to tell us on your own. Naruto flinched at that. He had never thought about telling them, or anyone for that matter. His eyes widened slightly in realization. He had wasted a lot of time wondering whether or not he should go ahead and try to master some of the other jutsu he had seen without his parents' concert, and even after he had decided to, he had held back and only practiced a few jutsu for just in case he had been caught. Then he would just say all he managed to learn was a few jutsu, and none of them were too dangerous. His punishment would surely have been less severe. Aside from the original amount of jutsu he was supposed to learn, he had only learned a total of 7 jutsu, 2 D-ranked jutsu, 3 C-ranked jutsu, 1 B-ranked jutsu, and 1 A-ranked. All in all, that brought him to a total of 5 D-ranked jutsu, 8 C-ranked, 2 B-ranked, and now 1 A-rank. D-ranked equals replacement jutsu, clone jutsu, fire style, cinder technique, water clones jutsu, earth style, earth clone jutsu. C-ranked equals mythical fire phoenix jutsu, fire style, dragon fire, fire style, aerial explosion, fire style, bed of fire, water style, evil windmill water shuriken, water style, water chains jutsu, earth style, mud river, earth style, earth dragon blast. B-ranked equals fire style, great dragon fire, fire style, hellfire whirlwind. A-ranked equals fire style, hellfire clap. After mentally checking the number of jutsu he smiled proudly. After many burned clothes, throat, mouth and chest, he could proudly say he knew how to do many fire jutsu, a few water and earth jutsu, but that did not matter. He had tried doing a few wind and lighting jutsu. He had not only found it very hard, but they drained a lot of chakra from him. After countless tries and neither successes, he had given up on them and moved on to other things. Earth and water jutsu were and still are slightly difficult and take at least double the chakra required for a fire jutsu, but with his large chakra reserves and very good chakra control, they did not make that much of a dent on his progress for him to deter from learning them. Fire jutsu, he had to smile at that. Fire jutsu were by far where he truly shined at. From the very beginning he had felt drawn towards the fire element, and could honestly say he loved them. Sure, he had been injured trying to learn them, but hey, whoever said power came at a free price? Like they say, no pain, no gain. Another thing he loved about fire jutsu was because they did not drain his chakra a lot. In fact, he hardly ever realized the chakra drain from using D-ranked fire ninjutsu. That was also why he had learned so many fire jutsu. They were simply too good to pass up. Looking at his mother, Naruto wanted to test something that had been bugging him ever since he had started training. How strong was he? He wanted to test himself against someone powerful, to see whether he was making any progress in archiving his dream of surpassing all the Hokages, to see whether all his hard work was paying off. This was his chance. His mother was a very powerful person. He wasn't arrogant enough to believe he could actually defeat her, or land a hit on her for that matter, but he knew if there was anyone he could test himself, it was her. He would have asked other people like his father, grandfather or grandmother, however all of them had their own disadvantages. His father was a very busy person and spent most of his time at work. His grandmother, much like his father, spent most of her time at the hospital, and with the way she treated him, he doubts she would actually hurt him. His grandfather was always out of the village. He rarely ever visited, so that was another dead end. There was also Kakashi. He often came to the house to talk with his father or at times play with him and his sisters, but the guy was so lazy, and don't even get him started on his lateness tenderness. The only person left was his mother. She was strong. She definitely wouldn't hold back on him. She was always around, so the choice was obvious. Ka-san Kushina looked at him. Would you fight me? A smile suddenly made its way across her face. She had been waiting for him to ask her sooner or later. Both Hitomi and Hikari had already done the same. They had asked her to fight them separately, and give them pointers and tell them exactly how strong they were. From their fight she had deduced that both girls at most were mid-chunin level, bordering high chunin level. That was the reason she had actually come to her son's private training ground, to test him as well. As luck would have it, he was the one to ask her instead. Okay Naruto-kun, I want you to come at me with everything you have, don't hold back on anything. She jumped away to create some distance between them, with the kunai already drowned. Don't worry, I wasn't planning to, Naruto thought, with his Sharingan already active, spinning slowly in preparation for the battle. Hokage office the same time. Minato looked at the crystal ball on his table in rapt attention. He was not alone. Around him were Tsunade, Kakashi, Shizen and Kurenai. When Kushina had told him that she was going to test the children, he had made sure to view all the matches on the crystal ball. Tsunade, who happened to have overheard the conversation by chance, had made sure to not miss the fights. She had also invited Shizen, who had happily come. He had told Kakashi because he was basically family. Kurenai had just been invited to watch the match between mother and son because she was after all Naruto's Jonin sensei, and the better she understood her team's abilities, the better she could determine how best to implement them into their missions and teamwork. This ought to be interesting, Kakashi said, pocketing his book, which actually surprised everyone in the room, though no one made a comment about it. Everyone was silent as they gazed at the crystal ball. Breaking the silence, how long do you think he will last? Tsunade suddenly asked. Minato thought about it for a few seconds. Hitomi had lasted 13 minutes. Hikari had lasted 14 minutes, so Naruto would last for at least 17 to 18 minutes. Not looking away from the crystal ball, he answered her 17 to 18 minutes, give or take. She nodded her head slightly. Kurenai, who had been listening into their conversation, could not help but wonder why they had set such a small time limit for the test. Surely Kushina was not going to fight a genin with her full strength, was she? Voicing her question, she asked. Kushina-sama won't seriously fight him, will she? They all turned their heads towards her. She could not help but blush at the sudden attention. We'll let you see for yourself. Kakashi was the one to respond mysteriously. She was about to ask what he had meant by that, but was cut off by the Hokage's voice. Should they're starting. Back at TH clearing. Kushina was the first to move. In a show of impressive speed she disappeared from her position. Naruto had only a second to dodge a fist that appeared right where his face had been. His Sharingan had picked her movements and warned him about the strike. Sensing another attack, he raised both his hands just in time to block a kick to the head. Unfortunately for him, he had not anticipated the strength of the kick, which sent him skidding for a few feet. Coming to a stop, he almost yelped at the pain in his arms. She's strong. I can't match her in speed nor in strength, maybe dash. Fire style. Dragon Fire Jutsu. A stream of fire came out from his mouth. Unlike the other times when he had made it into a dragon head, this time the fire blew out from his mouth like a flamethrower. He held the jutsu for a few more seconds before stopping. When the smoke cleared, a charred, burnt body could be seen lying on the ground. With his Sharingan, Naruto could see that the person lying on the ground was indeed his mother, but something about it felt wrong. He was about to throw a kunai at the body when it suddenly exploded into smoke. His eyes widened. A clone? What type of clone was that? He bit his lip to prevent himself from screaming when a fist buried itself into his stomach. Kushina smiled, but that smile turned into a frown when she saw the Naruto she had hit smirk at her. She had no time to react when the Naruto suddenly exploded. Explosive tag, she noted, before she disappeared in a smoke explosion. I must say, Naruto, I'm impressed. You've managed to fight me at Jonin level. How about we tune this up some more? Kushina shouted, looking directly at her son who was hiding in a tree. Multiple shurikens suddenly appeared headed straight for her, but to her surprise none of them were on target. She looked on quizzically, wondering what he was up to. Her eyes caught a silver glint trailing the shuriken. So that's his plan. In mid-air, the shuriken turned around and all of them spun round her. Strings they were attached to encasing her, binding her and her body. Naruto appeared in front of her with his hand flashing through hand seals. Earth style. Mud river. He pressed his hands on the ground and soon it began to liquidity, turning into mud. The attack continued until the ground under her too turned into mud, much as sank her into the ground, till her chest. Naruto gathered more chakra into his lungs and flashed through another set of hand seals and heaving a mighty breath. Fire style. Bed of fire. He spewed out an oily substance that spread on top of the mud river till it covered the whole surface area. As soon as the area was covered, Naruto willed the oily substance to ignite. The effect was immediate. It resulted in a carpet of flame that spread out where the oil was. When the fire cleared, what remained was the ground, now solid hard. In the middle was an empty body-sized hole. Naruto panted. He was getting tired. If things went like this, he wouldn't last for any longer. Few that would have hurt, Kushina said, appearing on top of a tree. Her clothes were burnt slightly and a small patch of her skin was charged slightly. Time to try a different approach. Kushina was about to attack when her surroundings started to shift. Genjutsu, she thought, and brought her hands together and gathering her chakra. Kai! The illusion easily dispelled. Kushina attacked. Disappearing in a blur, she appeared in front of Naruto. Cocking her fist, she let go, and was surprised when her fist passed right through Naruto. What she thought in surprise, she attacked again and was surprised when the same result happened. She looked at Naruto and saw that he was looking directly at her, with his Sharingan active. She almost hit her head with her palm. Of course, never look at a Sharingan user directly in the eyes. She had not anticipated that he had gotten that far with his Sharingan. She gathered her chakra once more and in bursts broke the genjutsu. When the illusion dispelled, what she saw surprised her. There stood Naruto. His back was hunched backwards, a large amount of chakra gathering in his chest. Fire Sly. Great Dragon Fire Jutsu. 5 large dragon heads, easily twice as big as a normal fire dragon jutsu, lounged at her with great speeds. Upon contact, a fiery explosion unlike any other shook the entire training ground. The shock waves from the explosion sent Naruto flying away into the trees. When the explosion died down, a large crater was formed. Several trees were blown away and a few trees had been burnt till only the branches and stumps remained. Naruto staggered as he stood up. He had used almost every amount of chakra on that attack. His Sharingan was slowly spinning until it stopped, and his eyes turned back to their normal darker shade of blue. He looked at the center of the attack but could not see clearly as it was obscured by dust and smoke. The dust slowly settled down, and behind it was a cocoon of golden chains. The chains started retreating into the ground and he could clearly see his mother. She was not injured. Aside from the previous burn marks and slightly charred clothes, there was no new injuries on her form. She gave him an uploading smile before disappearing, only to appear a second later in front of him with her knee buried in his stomach. He hunched forward in agonizing pain. Before he could recuperate, she disappeared again and kicked him in his chest, sending him flying into the air. He blinked when a red blur passed him. He didn't see anything but something akin to a very large metal bar hit him in the back, sending him straight to the ground. When he crushed into the ground, a small crater formed where he had hit. His vision blurred and the last thing he saw was a red blur picking him up before the world went black. Kushina looked at her son with a proud look on her face. He had done exceptionally well. She had not in all honesty expected him to be this good, and to think he had even pushed her far enough to use her chakra chains. Even though she had not been going all out, she was still impressed at how strong and how well he had used his jutsu in conjunction. She picked him up from the small crater and carried him bridal style, and disappeared in a leaf shunshin. Hokage office. Everyone in the room was silent with different expressions on their faces. Minato had a surprised and proud look. Kakashi's eye was slightly widened. Shizen. I didn't expect him to that strong, Shizen mumbled under her breath, but everyone heard her, and all of them could not help agree. How strong would you say he is? Kurenai asked, still shocked from what she had seen. High Chunin, bordering low Jonin. Minato responded proudly. He knew his son was strong. From the very day they had begun to teach them, Naruto had shown prodigious skills at everything he did. He had been worried when Naruto had told them about what he had found in the Uchiha clan library. He was worried that his son would become power-hungry and eventually follow in his predecessor Madara footprints. That was why they had set a limit for the number he was allowed to learn. Though like the prodigy he was, Naruto had quickly mastered the set of jutsu he had chosen. He had at times wondered whether or not to learn more. When he chose to learn more, Minato had wanted to stop him, but Kushina had stopped him before he could, stating that they should not try to hinder their son's growth, that they should not decide for him what to and what not to learn. In the end he had given in, though he kept tabs on his son using the crystal ball. 2 months later. 2 months had passed since Naruto had faced off against his mother. Once he had woken up in the hospital from the beating she had given him, he recalled the end of their battle. He went straight to her, to ask her about how strong she thought he was. He couldn't stop the proud smile that had made its way across his usually stoic face when he heard what she had to say about him. It was like a small amount of weight had been removed from his shoulders. He was strong and was getting stronger. All those hours spent training had been and was still paying off, immensely. After that, he had thrown himself more and more into his training. He still felt that the gap between how strong he was and how strong he wanted to be was still too wide, infinitely wide. During his time with Team 8, they would spend 2 hours working on their teamwork. Then Kurenai would have them work on some obstacles, and make them do a few rounds around the training ground. Finally she would have them work on their chakra control. After that she would work with each of them individually, and then they would take a single mission. After the mission she would let them go home, or in Naruto's case go to get some more train. That had been their team's routine for the past 2 months, so when they arrived at the Hokage's office they were all surprised when instead of requesting a normal D-ranked mission Kurenai did something different. "I would like to request for a C-ranked mission, Hokage-sama." Everyone, even the Hokage, was surprised. "Oh? Are you sure?" the Hokage asked. After all, Kurenai had only had her Genin team for 2 months. Most Jonin didn't take any missions above D-ranked until after at least 7 months, from the time they had become true Genins. Kurenai looked at her team and nodded her head. "I believe my team is ready for a C-ranked mission, Hokage-sama." Minato looked at the mission request on his desk. His eyes lit up slightly when he found a perfect mission for them. "Here is a C-ranked mission." He grabbed a file and handed it to Kurenai. "Your mission is to deliver an important scroll to a Sannin, who will be waiting for you at the border between Konoha and Suna. Do you accept this mission?" Kurenai looked at the mission details before nodding her head. "Hi, Hokage-sama," she said, bowing her head slightly, before turning to her team. "Go and pack for a 2-day journey. Make sure to bring essentials only, and meet me at the gate in 1 hour." The Genins nodded their head, and walked out of the office. "Naruto!" Minato called out at his son, who was already at the door. "Toussaint?" Naruto responded and turned around to look back at his father. "Be careful out there, okay, and good luck." "I will, thank you." He was about to walk out before Minato spoke again. "Don't forget to tell your mother and grandmother about where you are going. They would be hurt if you didn't." Naruto froze and a small shiver went down his spine. He was not looking forward to that. Minato watched, with a proud smile, as his son went out on his first C-ranked mission. He looked at a picture he had on his desk. It was a picture of him carrying a 3-year-old Naruto on his neck. He was wearing his usual Hokage robes and Naruto was wearing some orange pajamas with green toads on it. "They grow up so fast," he thought to himself, returning to his paperwork. Naruto walked towards the gate, and was not surprised to find everyone else waiting for him. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, not giving them a reason as to why he was late. Kurenai raised an eyebrow and gave him a questionable glance. "Where is your backpack?" she asked, seeing that the only thing Naruto had on himself, aside from his usual clothes, was a kunai pouch. Naruto raised his hand slightly, and shuffled his jersey slightly to show his arm. What drew everyone's attention was the seal that was written on his hand. He added a little chakra to the seal and a puff of smoke appeared. When the smoke cleared, his small backpack could be seen on the ground. "I keep all my things sealed on myself. It is far easier and way more convenient this way," he explained, showing another seal on his hand. "How does it work?" Shino asked curiously. "The seal creates a pocket dimension where everything I seal in it is stored. By adding a minuscule amount of chakra to the seal, the items are brought out from the seal." His parents were both seal experts, and so he learned a thing or two from them. However, he was not as interested in seals like they were. That was more Hikari's forte than his. Kurenai gave Naruto an uplifting smile. Her student was proving to be more surprising as time went on. "Can you do the same for me?" Shino asked, seeing the benefits of having his items sealed. Not only would it provide him with less weight to carry, which could potentially and possibly fatally slow him down, but the likelihood of his items getting lost or stolen was reduced to near non-existent. Naruto nodded his head, happy to help out his best friend/teammate. He channeled chakra to the seal on his wrist and a scroll appeared. He opened the scroll and another seal could be seen written on it. After channeling chakra to the seal, some writing tools appeared. "Where would you like me to place the seal?" Naruto asked, dipping the brush into a pot of ink. Shino pulled the sleeve up on the right hand of his coat. "There is a limit to the amount of thing you can seal. You will know the seal is full when you try to add more things and nothing happens," he added lastly. "How do I seal my things in it?" Shino questioned. Put the things you want on the ground, focus a small amount of chakra into the seal, and the rest will take care of itself. To unseal them, just add some chakra to the seal and say, Kai, and they will be unsealed. Hinata looked at Naruto nervously. She wanted to ask him to do the same thing as he did for Shino, but was too afraid to ask. What if he said no? Naruto and Shino had been friends for a long time and she had hardly ever spoken to him. Even though they were teammates, Naruto was a very silent and distant person. In the 2 months they had been teammates, he had only hung out with them twice. Even then it had been Kurenai who had convinced him to go with them, on the grounds that it would help build their teamwork. He hardly said anything that time, and had Shino not been there, it would have been very awkward. Truth be told, she had no idea where she stood with him. Sure, she was best friends with his sisters, and they were teammates, but that was it. She was shaken from her thoughts by Kurenai grabbing her shoulder. She looked up in confusion, and saw Kurenai giving her look that said go ahead. She nodded her head slightly, and gathered her courage. Hinata gulped slightly. Naruto-san, could you do the same for me? She finished, looking at the ground, and poking her fingers together. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. What is she so nervous about? He mused internally, and shrugging his shoulders, he dipped the brush into the pot of ink and approached her. Where would you like me to put it? Hinata blushed, and rolled up her sleeve to show her pale, white-skinned, left hand. Nodding his head, he held her hand with his and started to work. He did not notice Hinata's blush intensify tenfold at the contact, and if he did not show it. Seeing that Naruto was done, Kurenai took charge. Okay team, let's move out. Naruto, you take point. Shino and Hinata walk a few paces behind him. And remember, even though it's only a C-ranked mission, anything can happen, so be on your guard. Hi! 3 voices cried out at once, and with that Team 8 went on their first C-ranked mission, a mission that would change their lives. 5 hours later, Team Kurenai walked silently on the dirt road headed for the border between Suna and Konoha. Kurenai, who was walking behind her team, noticed that her team was all getting tired and looking worn out. Hinata was the worst of all. She was sweating. Her walking speed had slowed down visibly, but she was forcing herself to walk. Shino was next, not physically showing him being tired, but her trained eyes could easily pick up on the small details on him that clued her in. There was sweat glistening on his skin, and the large coat he was wearing was not helping him at all. His feet were slightly prodding down the road, and other than that nothing else was showing. Naruto, though, was not showing any signs of being tired. His pace had slightly decreased, yes, but nothing else indicated that he was tired. Probably because of his Uzumaki heritage, Kurenai thought to herself. Let's stop here and take a 30 minutes break, Kurenai said. They all stopped walking, immediately, immensely relieved. Hinata, can you tell me if there is anyone near our position? Hinata nodded her head. Byakugan, there is no one close, sensei. Kurenai nodded her head and indicated for her team to follow her. They followed her until they reached an open area. Rest up. I'll scout ahead. With that said, she disappeared into the trees, leaving the team on their own. Naruto looked at where their sensei had just disappeared from with a raised eyebrow. Hadn't Hinata just checked for people just now? Maybe she had something else she had to do, he thought to himself. He rolled up the sleeve of his jersey, and adding chakra to the seal on his hand, he unsealed the one thing he had been craving since he left the village Pocky. Finding a spot to sit down, Naruto did just that and enjoyed the kami-given food that is Pocky. Mind if I join you? He looked up from where he was sitting and saw Shino holding a bento box. He patted the spot next to him, indicating for Shino to sit. Go right ahead. Naruto looked at Hinata, and saw her sitting a few feet away, alone. Hinata, he called her. Her head whipped up so fast that he was surprised it didn't fly right off her neck. Come sit with us, he waved a hand, indicating a spot next to him and Shino. Thank you. Naruto waved her off. Don't mention it, we are teammates after all. Her cheeks reddened, and the ground suddenly became interesting. 30 minutes later, Kurenai arrived at the small clearing, to find her gen and team sitting together on the ground talking, which surprised her. She coughed lightly to get their attention. Time to go, they all nodded their head. They had already packed up everything after they had finished their meals. Next day, location, border between Konoha and Suna. Kurenai had taken point as the team continued on with their mission. They could see the desert about a half a kilometer, 500 meters, from where they were. You all stay here while I go ahead and meet the Suna ninja. Naruto, I'm leaving you in charge. Hinata, keep your Byakugan active, and scout for any signs of trouble. Seeing as they all understood their positions on what to do, Kurenai continued walking towards desert, where she knew the Suna ninja would be waiting for her. Team 8 watched as their sensei walked towards the desert. They saw her stop right on the area where the desert and the forest separated. She waited for a few minutes before a man appeared in the distance, walking toward her, and due to the distance between them they couldn't see the man's face or what he was wearing. Kurenai and the man spoke to each other, before Kurenai reached into her pouch and pulled out what looked like a scroll, and handed it to the man. The two exchanged a few more words before the man departed and Kurenai walked back towards them. After some time, Kurenai arrived back to where her team had been waiting for her with a smile on her face. Mission complete, let's head back home. Everyone looked disappointed at that, even Hinata. That was it? They all thought. Naruto knew about missions and how they were ranked. He also knew the likelihood of meeting any dangerous hazards on a C-ranked was very little. But in all honesty, he had been hoping they would run into some gangs or even missing neens. He could not help but be put off when they spent the entire day walking, only for the mission to end so easily. Unknown to him, his teammates were all also thinking the same thing. Kurenai saw the disappointed looks on her genin's face and smiled in amusement. She knew why they were all disappointed. After all, she too had once been in the same situation. When her sensei had told them they were going on a C-ranked mission, she, like any other naive genin, thought they would fight bandits/missing neens and even save countries and princesses. Imagine her disappointment when she discovered that the mission was to guard a merchant headed to a town a few miles away from Konoha. The team continued walking for 4 miles. By then the sun was high in the sky, making their journey that much harder. As the team was walking, Kurenai was walking behind them, with Shino and Hinata walking a few paces in front of her side by side, and Naruto taking point. Kurenai had instructed Hinata to constantly activate her Byakugan at random intervals to check for any signs of any trouble. In mid-step, Hinata froze, drawing both Kurenai and Shino's attention. As sensei, there are some people ahead of us. They all stopped walking. How many do you see? 8 of them. 5 are hiding and the other 3 are waiting on the road, Hinata said, shaking slightly. Kurenai silently cursed. Can you tell me their ranking? All members of the Hyuga clan were taught how to identify a person's strength/ranking by the amount of chakra they possessed, though this was not always correct because in some cases, at times a jonin could have a small amount of chakra. This was because they specialized in something like kenjutsu or genjutsu, and some genin could have more chakra than a chunin or jonin. 2 jonin, 3 chunin and 3 genin, Hinata answered. Kurenai cursed again. They couldn't go around them, because judging by the way they were waiting for them, they had already seen them coming. The situation was not a good one. They were outnumbered, and their enemies had more fire power than them. The only way for them to have any hopes of surviving this was for her to cast a strong enough genjutsu that would hold them long enough for Shino to drain their chakra and for Naruto to finish them off with one of his fire ninjutsu. With her plan in mind, Kurenai looked at her team. They would survive this, she vowed, all of them. Team 8 continued on walking straight ahead, acting as normal as they could possibly manage. They continued on walking until they were stopped by the 2 men who were standing in the middle of the road. Kurenai had moved so that she was walking slightly ahead of her team. Can I help you? Kurenai asked, looking directly at the 2 men. Both were wearing /Kumo headbands. Missing Nin, Kurenai thought to herself. Of course you can. How about you and that little princess there? Follow us, and we might think about letting the other 2 go alive, one of the men leered at Kurenai. She looked at him, taking what details she could about what appeared to be the leader. He had dark black hair hung limply on his head, and appeared unkempt. He had mud-colored brown eyes, a short but heavily built body that was made for combat, and had the scars to prove it. He was wearing a tight black fishnet that showed off his heavily scarred body, with brown cargo shorts that stopped at mid-calf, and normal dark blue, shinobi shoes. If there was one thing that Kurenai hated more than perverts, it was rapists, and by the looks of lust in these men's eyes as they seized her up, it was obvious what their intentions were. She held back the angry sneer that was threatening to slither across her ruby-painted lips. She reached down to her pouch that was tied around her tight, and pulled out a kunai, and her students did the same. Suddenly, 6 other men appeared from the bushes surrounding them. A look of shock appeared in her eyes. We can't have you fighting back now, can we? After all, you might hurt yourself. The same man spoke again, shaking his finger in a mocking gesture as a lecherous grin spread across his face. The same look that was on all of their faces. So how about you give up, and we can all get what we want? He gestured with his bandage-covered hand to his friends. Kurenai just smirked. How about we not? With that, Kurenai disappeared into nothingness, with the images of her genin team doing the same. Body stop technique. Much to the men's shock, multiple Kurenais appeared behind each of them like a solid ghost, gripping the back of their necks with one arm. They each felt their bodies freeze. They couldn't move at all, no matter how hard they tried. To make matters worse, they heard a buzzing sound like those made by bees. They saw a black cloud of insects swarm them, surrounding them and draining their chakra. From their hiding spot, Naruto looked at Shino, waiting for him to give the signal. Shino nodded his head, and that was all the confirmation he needed. Flashing through a few hand seals, he took a deep breath and, fire-style, dragon fire jutsu from his mouth, he blew out a large stream fire that came out much like a flamethrower. The fire hit the target, and loud screams of pain could be heard as the men were burned alive. The smell of burning flesh hit their nostrils, and all of them almost threw up. In fact, when the smoke cleared, revealing the smoking and badly burnt bodies of the dead men, Hinata was the first to throw up. Naruto looked at the men he had killed with a tint of guilt in his eyes. However, he had already killed before, so he didn't feel as guilty as most people would feel for their first kill. Naruto, Kurenai said worriedly. She hated that she had to force her genin into killing. She was also worried about how he would react to his first kill. I'm fine, I have already killed before, he responded in a monotone voice. Kurenai felt like a ton of bricks hit her on the head. How could she forget? The incident that happened 6 years ago. It was the talk of the entire village for over a month. All about how someone had broken into the old Namikaze house, and how Naruto had been forced to kill two ANBU-looking men. At first she had been skeptical about the whole thing. Seriously, how could a 6-year-old kid kill two fully trained ANBU? It wasn't until the Hokage had confirmed the story and her best friend Hana, who had been a part of the tracker team to investigate the scene, had told her face to face that it was true. "Now you've gone and done it," a gruff voice said behind them. They all looked over at where the voice had come from, and to their shock found 3 men standing there, their skin slightly pink from the intense heat of the fire. "How?" Kurenai asked in surprise, since she had been so sure they had gotten them all. The 3 men just smirked in response. "I will tell you when we are alone." Kurenai looked at the 3 men in front of her, 2 Jonin level and 1 Chunin. She hated what she was about to ask her genin to do, but she had no choice. "Naruto, you take the guy on the left, Shino and Hinata team up and take the one in the back, and I'll take loud mouth of here." Shino and Hinata looked at Kurenai with surprise. There were 2 Jonins and 1 Chunin left, and she had just instructed a lone genin to go against a Jonin level missing Nin. "Sensei, I don't think it is wise for Naruto to go against him alone," Shino spoke up, trying to save his friend from what he could see was a very dangerous battle, one that he would not win. Kurenai bit her lip. She had seen Naruto going all out and knew he was powerful, but that was a mock battle. Even though Kushina was barely holding back, he is her son, so she was sure at some point she might have pulled some punches. This, however, was a Jonin level missing ninja. He wasn't going to hold back, he was going to be attacking with the intent to kill. The problem was, Naruto was the only one skilled enough to face one of the ninja alone. She couldn't take on 2 Jonin level ninja once, so her best plan at the moment was for her to finish her battle as quickly as she could and then go help him put out. She looked at Naruto through the corner of her eyes and could see his Sharingan spinning madly in preparation for the battle. "We have no choice. Naruto, do you think you could keep him preoccupied long enough for me to finish my battle?" Naruto nodded his head. "If you're done rumbling to each other, can we get this show on the road?" The same man spoke up again, this time in annoyance. "Okay then team, you know what to do." They all nodded their heads. Shino's colony of insects slowly crawled out from his raised arms, and out from under the sleeve of his coat, taking to the air. Hinata had her Byakugan activated and was standing in Hyuga-Jukan stance. Naruto had a kunai held in reverse grip in his right hand. His hood was off, showing his wild untamed red hair and his Sharingan spinning madly. "Hi!" Shino and Hinata vs Chunin level Kyumo missing ninja. Shino and Hinata stared at their opponent, seizing him up. From what they could tell, the man was in his late 20s. He had short and choppily cut dull white hair that barely reached his shoulders. He had dark green forest-colored eyes and pale white skin that almost matched Hinata's. He was wearing a tight-fitting dull black shirt with baggy, torn green shorts that were ripped just below the knees. His forehead protector was tied on his bandaged left arm. "Fighting against the 2 genins, I feel insulted," he said, throwing several kunai at them. They both easily avoided the kunai, but to their shock the kunai all had explosive notes tied to them. When the kunai exploded, both Shino and Hinata had been forced to use a substation to get away from the blast radius. When they appeared from the smoke unharmed, the man sneered and took out a kunai and attacked Shino head-on. Shino retaliated by doing the same and fought with the man. The area they were in was filled with the sounds of clashing of metal, and the sight several sparks that arched through the air each time kunai met kunai. Shino was being pushed back by his opponent. He was not very good with head-to-head combat, and the man he was fighting against was taking advantage of that. In a display pure of speed, he disappeared from Shino's view and reappeared behind him. "Shino!" Hinata tried to warn him, but it was already too late. The man stabbed Shino in his back with the kunai. However, Shino dissolved into 1,000 insects. The insects swarmed the man, covering him from head to toe. Hinata rushed at the captured man with her Byakugan active. The moment the insects departed from the now much weakened man, she attacked. She gathered chakra to her hand, making it glow blue momentarily, and quickly thrust her palm at his chest. To the naked eye, it looked like all she had done was hit the man with her palm and sent him flying. To those with the dojutsu, however, with prior knowledge of the Hyuga fighting techniques, would tell you otherwise. The chakra in her palm had been sent directly into the man's chest, severing several of his arteries and tendons. He died instantly and painfully. Not realizing what she had actually done, she ran to where she could see her teammate was. She found him leaning on a tree with his back turned against it, and he was breathing heavily. "Aryuh hurt Shino?" she asked. She had seen the kunai stab him before he had substituted with a clone of his insects. "The kunai did not injure me greatly, however it seems that it was laced with poison. My insects are trying to purge the poison, but I don't think." From behind his glasses his eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he collapsed, unconscious. "Shino!" Hinata screamed out, eyes wide in fear. "With Naruto a few minutes earlier, a Sharingan user? Haven't fought one of those in quite some time," his opponent commented. Naruto ignored him and readied himself. "A silent type, huh? We will soon change that." The man disappeared in a burst of speed and appeared in front of Naruto with his fist buried in his stomach. He smirked, assuming he had finished his battle quickly and effortlessly. His eyes widened slightly when the Naruto he hit crumbled to dust, revealing itself to have been an earth clone. He looked around the area to find his target. When he looked up, he saw Naruto in midair, blowing out a huge fire dragon. Flashing through a few hand seals, he shouted, "Water style, water cannon jutsu." From out of his mouth he spat out a powerful beam of water that easily tore through the fire attack and hit an unsuspecting Naruto, who was still in midair, head-on. Naruto used his hands as a shield to block some of the force of the attack, but the attack was still strong enough that it sent him flying away and managed to break a few of his ribs. He crashed harshly on the hard and unforgiving, creating spiderweb-like cracks on the ground. Sitting up, he put his hands on his broken ribs, and his hands started to glow green. A few seconds later he had completely healed his ribs, so it was as if they had never been broken. At that moment he was thankful for learning a few medic jutsu from his bachan. They had all been pleasantly surprised to learn that even though he had a large chakra reserves, his control over it was near perfect. Whether it was from his Senju DNA or the constant use of his Sharingan that had improved his chakra control to where it was, he was not certain. But hey, he was not complaining. His grandmother had happily taught him a few medic ninjutsu, though because of how complex and hard it was to learn them, he had not learned a lot, just enough to heal a few fractures and minor broken bones and stop some bleeding. Naruto silently cursed. Of all the opponents he had to face against, it had to be the one who used water. What was a water-type Jonin doing in Kumo anyways? And didn't Kumo specialize in lighting-style ninjutsu and kenjutsu? He ranted in his mind. At that moment, he slightly regretted having focused so much on fire-style jutsu. He had a few water and earth jutsu, but no 33 any of them were strong enough to overpower his opponent. He made a silent promise to learn some more earth and water jutsu when he got home. After all, he could easily convince his grandmother to allow him to access the Senju library, that was, of course, if he got out of this battle alive. He jumped away just in time to avoid several kunai hitting the very spot he had been standing on. He looked at where the kunai had come from, and saw that his opponent was looking down at him from the tree he was standing on, with a smug look on his face. "I'm surprised you survived that attack," his opponent growled darkly with a murderous glint in his eyes. "Let me rectify that. Water style, giant water dragon, water style, giant water dragon." They both shouted at the same time, spitting out large globs of water that transformed into giant dragons with snake-like body structures and yellow glowing eyes. The dragons met in the middle of the space between the two ninja and upon impact exploded, creating a large wave of water that sent both ninjas floating away. Naruto deflected a kunai coming at him with his own, and not giving him any time to recuperate, the Jonin attacked him head-on. Naruto blocked every strike the Jonin sent his way with slight difficulty. True, his Sharingan could predict each and every attack, but the Jonin was faster than him, making it harder for him to defend himself. Seeing as the Jonin was gaining an edge with each passing moment, he jumped away from the head-on assault and, going through a few hand seals, spoke. "Fire style. Great dragon fire." He blew out several dragon-headed fireballs, all aimed at his opponent. He heard Hinata scream out in terrified concern. "Shino!" He looked over to where her voice had come from in worry, and that distraction cost him dearly. The fire jutsu hit the water-covered ground and vaporized into mist, and the Jonin appeared above him, his mouth bloated and hands on a seal. When trying to move, he found he couldn't. He looked down and saw chains made from water binding his feet to the ground. "Water style. Water cannon," just as the Jonin chanted in his head, and spat out a powerful beam of boiling lava hot water straight at the restrained and struggling Naruto. With his Sharingan, Naruto could see that the attack was significantly more powerful than the missing nin had used before. Due to the large amounts of chakra that was used in the jutsu, and from the steam rolling off of it, he didn't think he could survive it. He didn't have a fire just as strong that was strong enough to vaporize the water cannon jutsu, and there was not enough time for him to cast any jutsu. "No!" he shouted in desperation, his head turning to the side with his eyes shut tightly. He raised his arms up in a defensive cross formation. For a few seconds nothing happened, then he heard a loud explosion, like steaming water hitting something solid. He waited for a few more seconds, and still he did hear anything, nor did he feel any oncoming attack or any pain. Tentatively he opened his eyes and was surprised to find himself surrounded by wood in a what appeared to be a wood-like cocoon that stretched around him while leaving the back open, A/N. Think of the cocoon-like wall that Yamato used to block the shockwaves from the battle against four-tailed Naruto and Orochimaru. The Jonin softly landed on the ground, with a smug look on his face as he looked at where his attack had hit. The area was covered in steam from the boiling water. He was sure the battle was over. He had to give credit where it was due though. The kid he fought was very good. For someone his age to go against him, and actually hold out this long on his own, that had been, in the end, he was a Jonin with more battle experience than him. He was about to head to where he had heard that scream come from. After all, he still had a job to do. However, before he was attacked. He jumped away just in time to avoid large wooden branches that burst out from the ground where he had been standing. What? He asked out in surprise, shocked at being attacked by wood. As far as he knew, wood-style ninjutsu was only ever used in history by one person and one person alone, the first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. He looked around trying to find who had sent the attack. "Come out!" he shouted after not finding anyone. He jumped again as more wooden branches burst from the ground, only this time the branches and the roots of the trees chased after a ghost Naruto appeared standing a few feet away from the Jonin. "Why you?" he stuttered out, taking a step back. What he did not see, however, was the large tree behind him until it was too late. Roots and branches from the tree grabbed him, wrapping tightly around his body, binding him to the tree so he could not move. Naruto approached the man and in one swift move, stabbed him in his chest right where his heart was, killing him instantly. When the man was dead, Naruto dropped to the ground on his knees panting hard, willing those branches and roots into attacking, without ever having done before, especially without having any kind of training whatsoever had drained his chakra to near exhaustion. He slowly rose to his feet, using the trees for support as he walked to his teammates. The trees that had burst out during his fight with the Jonin, aiding him immensely, slowly sank back into the ground, and the branches holding the now dead man returned to their rightful position. He never noticed a plant-like figure sinking into the ground with a single yellow eye looking at him. Leader-sama will be interested in this. Naruto arrived where his teammates were. That was not at all far from where his battle had taken just place. He saw Hinata crouched on the ground, hovering protectively over Shino, who lay unconscious and motionless. Thinking the worst, he quickened his paces, straining his sore and highly exhausted body. "What's wrong with him?" he asked Hinata, startling the poor girl. Disliking the feeling of being so weak, he took a small bottle with several red pills in it out of his pocket. Taking one of them, he felt his chakra being replenished. He's been poisoned without a moment to waste. Naruto took out another bottle from his pocket that was filled with yellow pills. He took out a single pill and opened Shino's mouth and placed it on his tongue. He slowly tilted Shino's head upwards, and using his other hand he stroked down Shino's throat gently. These actions had the effect of causing the unconscious Shino to instinctively swallow the pill. Hinata, who had been silent throughout the whole process, spoke up when he was done. "What did you give him?" "It is a special pill that my grandmother made. She gave them to us when we graduated from the academy. The pills stop any infections or poison from spreading within the body or bloodstream. However, they only last for about 5 hours before they completely stop working," he explained, putting the pills back in his pocket. "We have to get him to a hospital soon. Hinata, can you use your Byakugan and tell me whether Sensei is done or if she is still fighting that missing nin?" "Sensei is right here," Kurenai said, appearing behind them. "Is everyone alright?" she asked, already automatically checking Shino. The two genins nodded their head. "Shino has been poisoned. I have given him some medication to stop the poison from spreading, but it will wear off soon," Naruto told Kurenai. She nodded her head and inwardly cursed that her genin was in a life-threatening situation on his first real mission. "Are you two uninjured enough to travel?" Kurenai asked. Hinata had not done much fighting, and had not suffered any serious life-threatening injuries, so she was okay. Naruto, though, had fought a full-on battle with the Jonin, and had it not been for the chakra pill he had taken, he would have dropped down on the ground in exhaustion. They both nodded their heads. Kurenai took Shino into her arms, carrying him bridal style. "We will move as fast as we can back to Konoha and will take breaks on the way, as they are needed. However, our first priority is to get Shino back to Konoha as fast as we possibly can," Kurenai said seriously. With that, Team 8 rushed towards Konoha as fast as they could, to save their teammate / best friend / student's life. "Arg, I'm so bored right now. Why doesn't anything exciting ever happen?" Kotetsu groaned out, banging his head on little gate post he was sighted on. "I don't see why you're complaining. You're the one who suggested we guard the gate in the first place. It will be easy, Izumo. We'll get paid for doing nothing. That's what you said, right?" Izumo responded with a frown on his face. He too was bored. "Well, you didn't have to agree with me," Kotetsu shouted back, embarrassed about choosing to guard the gates. "You said it would be easy money," Izumo shouted back, standing up from his post and glaring at his best friend, who stood up and started glaring back. Someone said, drawing their attention. They both looked at the direction of the voice and saw a slightly beaten-up Kurenai holding Shino in her arms. Her other two genins standing behind her. They both noticed that Naruto's cloths were torn and there was a large hole on his stomach, which was showing his skin. They were both surprised to find that Hinata had damage on her form, and only looked to be tired. "Oh, you may pass." Kurenai nodded her head and continued running into the village towards the hospital, her two genins following behind. "What do you think happened to them?" Izumo asked after the team was out of their sight. Shrugging his shoulder, "I don't know. Whatever it was, it must have been bad to put them in that kind of state," Kotetsu responded, and Izumo nodded his head. They were both silent for a while before. "I'm bored," Kotetsu whined. "Shut up, Kotetsu, you're the one who chose this job," Izumo said in annoyance. "It's your fault for agreeing with me in the first place," Kotetsu responded, standing up again, and the cycle continues. A few hours later, after dropping Shino to the hospital, Kurenai had left her team to go and give the Hokage a mission briefing, though not before she had them that she was giving the team 2 weeks off. Naruto walked towards the Senju house with a solemn look on his face, his thoughts going back to the mission they had just completed. The mission, a simple delivery mission, turned out to be a very dangerous one that almost cost them their lives. He clenched his fist tightly. His best friend had almost died on that mission. The thought made him halt for a second. He knew about the dangers and sacrifices of being a shinobi. His parents had made sure to make them understand that being a shinobi was not like most people thought it was about. That as a shinobi there were times when you will have to kill, watch your comrades die, assassinate innocent people, on all because of a mission. He had taken those words to heart, but after that close encounter with those missing nin had been a real eye-opener for him. His thoughts drifted to his own fight, Even though he had held his own and even won against a Jonin, he had lost. The battle showed him his weaknesses. He relied too much on his fire ninjutsu. True, he had a few water and earth-style jutsu. They were too few. He had hardly put any effort into the earth and water affinities, something he would rectify soon. He remembered how he too almost died. Had he not used the Mokutan jutsu to grow that shell-like wall, he would surely have been in the afterlife now. Mokutan. He suddenly realized he had used wood-style ninjutsu, the famous wood release that was used by the first Hokage, the ability that allowed said man to capture and tame all the bijou. He almost jumped in excitement. He had gained such a powerful ability. His strength would surely increase now, and it was inevitable. He couldn't wait to tell his family, especially his grandmother. She would be thrilled to know he could use the same ability that her grandfather had used, and to her it meant that the Senju blood was not going to die with just her but would also continue with Naruto and his children. He halted slightly. How was he going to train using the wood release? He didn't know how he had used it in the first place, nor did he know anyone alive who had it. It was just like his Sharingan. When he had awakened it, he had no clue how to use it. Even more embarrassing was that when he first awakened it, he didn't even know how to activate and shut it off. But at least back then he had the Uchiha library to help him. That's it, he shouted in his mind. Just like how he learned to control his Sharingan from the Uchiha library, he could also learn about the wood release from the Senju library. The first Hokage must have left some notes about his wood release just in case one of the Senju children was able to awaken it, and hopefully a few jutsu to go along with those notes. So now his goals were to first learn to use wood release and practice and improve his earth and water affinities. With that in mind, Naruto continued his walk home. Before he could do any of that, he first needed some rest. He had managed to hold it off so they could get to the village quickly, but he was exhausted. He had not recovered fully from his fight. His body was aching everywhere. He added some extra speed to his step, and the sooner he got home, the sooner he could finally rest. With Hinata, much like Naruto, was walking towards her own house in deep thoughts, her mind constantly replaying the events that took place during the mission. She had never felt so useless in her life. Her teammates and sensei had all fought against their enemies, and she had barely done anything to help Shino against their own four. She bit her lip when she thought about Naruto, her teammate. He had single-handedly fought and won against a Jonin-level missing nin. And yet she had barely held her own against a Chunin-level nin with the help of Shino, and that's what riled her up. If Naruto had been able to win against Jonin, and she had trouble fighting against a Chunin, what did that say about her strength? She knew he was strong, from his battle against their sensei, but now she could truly see how strong he was, and the gap between their strength was not one to laugh at. Right now she was the weakest in their team. She was the one holding them back, a burden for them to carry. She clenched her fist tight enough to almost draw blood. Not anymore, she spoke under her breath. From now henceforth, she swore, she become stronger. She would not become a burden anymore. She would walk alongside her teammates' side and not behind them. She would show them the true Hyuga Hinata. She started sprinting towards the Hyuga compound, with determination burning deep in her eyes. She had some training to do. 2 days later, his body no longer ached. His chakra was fully restored. All his muscles were healed. He had to tell the truth. He loved his Uzumaki and Senju genes. Not only did he have a large amount of chakra, near perfect control of that chakra, but his body's natural healing rate was second to his Jinchuriki sister. He walked towards the hospital with 2 people in mind. The hospital was near the Hokage Tower, which was close to the Senju compound, and so it didn't take long for him to arrive there. Even from afar he could see the very large building which easily towered over many of the other buildings in Konoha. He couldn't help but marvel at its size. The hospital, one of the most important buildings in the Leaf Village, responsible for saving and healing hundreds of injured people per day, and to think his grandmother run it all. He arrived at the straight footpath leading to the double doors leading inside the massive building. He entered the building and was immediately greeted by the smiling face of a nurse sighted on the reception desk. "Hello, what can I do for you today?" she said with a warm smile on her face. Naruto smiled back slightly in response. "I'm here to see my teammate. He was brought here yesterday." "What's his name?" the kind nurse responded, taking out a file from under her desk. "Shino Aburame." Aburame, oh! "Here he is," she exclaimed in success. "Says here he was brought in yesterday and was sent to the ER. He is currently in room 204 recovering. You can see him." "Thank you," Naruto responded, walking towards the room. "It's trouble at all? Would you like me to take you out? I mean to the room," she said hurriedly with a pink tint in her cheek. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow at her behavior. "No thank you. I know the room," he said kindly, walking away. He had been at the hospital many times before, and he knew his way around. The nurse sighed dreamingly as she watched the young red-haired boy walking away. She had to admit, for such a young boy, he was handsome, with those deep, beautiful blue eyes, deep spiky red hair reaching his shoulder, perfect light tan skin, an angular face almost free of his baby fat. Judging by who his parents were, especially his father, she could only imagine how handsome he would become when he grew older. She wouldn't mind having a go with someone as handsome as him, regardless of their age difference. Too bad she had almost every single female in the Leaf Village to compete with. She sighed again as she watched him disappear into the corner. A girl could only dream with that one. Naruto walked past the many doors of the hospital, some empty, some not. He held back a shiver as he made to his destination. The way that nurse on the reception desk had been eyeing him had scared the red-haired boy. It reminded him too much of the way Ami and to a lesser extent Ino looked at him back during the academy. Those looks, the way their eyes lit up with excitement, and what he could identify as lust. Whenever their eyes landed upon his form, he was sure if ever he were to drop his gourd around any of the females in Konoha, he would long since have lost his virginity. He saw the room where Shino was said to be in. Entering the room, he found a sleeping Shino lying on the hospital bed. He was not at all surprised to see him wearing his black sunglasses. Aburame and their secrecy, he scoffed slightly. Honestly, he had not once ever seen his friend not wearing them, or any of his clan's men for that matter. Maybe he should ask Shino why they liked wearing black glasses so much. Putting his little mental observation for later, he approached Shino and sat on the chair beside his bedside. He sat there in silence, not sure what to do or say. He started feeling awkward. He looked at Shino and could see his chest steadily rising up and falling down. He was connected to any machines, indicating that he was not in any danger. The poison had been fully removed from his system. 10 minutes passed and Naruto had not moved his chair. He stood up from his chair and took out a little blue card from his pocket. He put the card on the window and walked out of the room. Tsunade sighed in exasperation as she glared at the mountain of paper on her desk. Had she known being the head medic Nin would have her sit behind a desk and do so much paperwork, she would never have agreed in the first place. Looking at the large amount of documents still waiting to be read, signed and approved, she rubbed her temples. I need a break. Taking out a small golden key from her pocket, she walked towards the picture frame of her family that was on the wall. She removed the picture from the wall, and behind it was a safe. She opened the safe using the key she had taken out from her pocket. This was where she kept a secret stash of her stress reliever. She smirked inwardly. Shizen may know where all her other secret hide sports were, but not this one. She had made sure to hide it perfectly and made it inaccessible to anyone but her. She opened the safe and was rewarded with an empty safe, save for a neatly folded note. She snatched the note and read it. Drinking is not good for you, Tsunade-sama. Love, Shizen. A chibi smiling Shizen was drawn at the back of the ladder, giving her a thumbs up. Tsunade started shaking. Her eyes glowed with righteous fury. She raised her foot and swiftly brought it to the ground. The action shook the entire room and good portion of the building too. Crack marks appeared on the ground where she had stomped her foot. Shizen! When I get my hands on that little, her angry murderous thoughts were stopped by someone knocking on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Enter, she said, calming her a bit. She would sort out her little apprentice later. The door opened, and in walked a red-haired boy that she instantly recognized. Naruto! She exclaimed happily, her anger forgotten by the sight of her grandson. She walked towards him and hugged him, burying the poor boy in her generous bosom. After an eternity, on Naruto's part, of hugging and smothering the poor boy, she finally let him go. When he had been freed from what he could only say as one of the most dangerous situations in his young life, only second to being trapped in a room full of fangirls, Naruto took a deep breath to replace the oxygen he had been deprived of seconds ago. He looked at his grandmother, who in all honesty didn't look like a grandmother at all. Considering her age, he wondered how she looked so young. He would have asked, but he was not willing to risk making her angry. He had seen how she reacted when angered. His grandfather learning how to fly was proof of it. He straightened himself, unaware of the blush on his face, but unfortunately for him, Tsunade noticed it. Ah, my little Naruto is blushing, she gasped, putting her hand on her mouth. Don't tell me you have developed a crush on me. You know Naruto incest is prohibited. She put a hand under her cheek and a thinking meaner bust. Since you're so cute, I'll make an exception. To say Naruto was embarrassed would be an understatement. His face as red as his hair. He was stuttering words trying to defend him. Tsunade could only laugh at his failed attempts of denial her grandson was making. After having a good laugh and her mood dramatically improved, she decided to put him out of his misery. Relax, I'm just joking, kid. You're a little too young for my taste. Naruto breathed out a sigh of relief, the blush on his face receding. Honestly, why did his grandmother and mother like to tease or rile him up as often as they could? It was like they enjoyed watching him get embarrassed or lose his cool. But that couldn't be it, could it? Basa and Tsunade glared at him. I mean Bachan, he quickly corrected himself. Tsunade sat on her chair with and indicated for him to seat on the chair in front of her desk. I don't think this is a social visit, is it? Naruto inwardly sighed. Was he that readable? No, I came here to ask you for something, he admitted. Tsunade narrowed, raised an eyebrow. Oh? What is it? Naruto fidgeted in his seat. He felt like he was back at the Uchiha compound asking Fugaku for his permission to enter the clan library. He tried calming his increasing nervousness. This was his grandmother. She loved him, surely she would agree. Could you getting annoyed? Spit it out, Tsunade said. Can you allow me to use the Senju library, he blurted out. Tsunade blinked. That was it? That was the reason why he was so nervous. All wanted to ask for was to use the library. It's not like there was anything important in it, or anything. Unknown to Tsunade, she had been silent the whole time as she thought about the stupid reason for her grandson's behavior, and her silence was making said boy very nervous. Sure, you can use the library all you want, she said offhandedly. Naruto just sweat drop at that. Here he was having a mental breakdown, worried that she was going to refuse or worse explode on him, and she had just casually given him permission to the library without so much of a care whatsoever. Seeing the relieved look on Naruto's face, Tsunade chuckled inwardly. Her grandson, an only living blood relative, was sure a weird one compared to his sisters. Unlike Hitomi and Hikari, who were both very loud, very open, and overly cheerful, Naruto was the odd man out. He was reserved, quiet, and rarely if ever spoke out loud. And truth be told, she was worried for him. She knew about how people treated him, the expectations that everyone had for him. She was worried that just like the Uchiha prodigy Itachi, he too would crumble under the pressure and do things that would haunt him for the rest of his life. She would often spy on him as he trained himself to the ground, wanting to get more powerful, to show his worth to everyone else. She wondered what would happen if he was to get that power. Would he become evil and abandon his family and friends and become a power-hungry tyrant like her teammate, or worse, Madara? Or would he use that power to protect his loved ones and the village like her grandfather? With the influence of his family, his friend, she knew he would not fall to the dark side, or at least she hoped he would not. Her grandson was destined for great things, that much was certain, and was going to change the world, for better or for worse. Pushing her thoughts aside, she stood up slightly to pinch his cheek. You shouldn't overthink things so much, Naruto. You're going to give yourself a brain tumor one day. Naruto rubbed his now sore cheek and gave her an annoyed look. Says one of the smartest women in the village, Naruto responded back. Don't get cheeky with me, brat, Tsunade said, amused by his response. They were both silent after. Seeing as he was not leaving and the maintain of paperwork on her desk would only grow if not attended to. Is there something else you wanted? She asked finally. Something happened to me on the last mission that I had. Naruto began getting Tsunade's attention. She had heard from Minato about the mission that he was talking about. They had been on C-ranked mission when a group of missing nin had attacked. From what she had been told in the mission briefing she had read, Naruto had fought against one of the Jonins and had won. The scolding she had given Minato for allowing a group of inexperienced genin to a C-ranked mission after they had been a team for only 2 months. And to make it worse, her grandson was on that team. Of course, Minato had defended himself, saying that sooner or later Naruto was going to go on a higher ranking and that he was strong, that she agreed on, and going on higher ranking missions would give him the experience he needed. She had calmed down after that and had stomped out of his office, threatening him that should her grandson or granddaughters be hurt in one of those missions, he would be in a world of hurt. She knew that she was wrong. She couldn't protect them forever. Sooner or later they, much like she did long ago, would set go on their own missions and leave their own lives. But whilst she still could, she would be the overprotective grandmother. What happened to you? She asked with a hint of worry in her voice. When I fighting against the missing nin, he trapped me and was surely going to kill me with a powerful water jutsu until? Tsunade said, now on edge, her hands shaking slightly. He had almost died. When the jutsu was about to hit him, I closed my eyes and felt something block it. When I opened them, I saw a wooden wall-like cocoon blocking it. I then attacked him using roots and trees. In the end, I caught him and bind him to a tree with roots and tree branched and killed him. Silence. Tsunade's mind shut down for a moment. She knew that there was a possibility that he would inherit her grandfather's wood release, but the possibility was so slim that she had all but forgotten about. Getting over her shock, she jumped out of chair and glommed Naruto. We yelped in surprise. Can you show me? She said after letting him go. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Well, you see, that's the problem. I don't know how I actually used it in the first place. It was a spur-in-the-moment thing. That's why I was actually asking you to use the Senju library in the first place. Well, that's not going to be much help. Naruto looked at her in confusion. The information in that library is the same as the one you'll find in the local library. Naruto physically deflated at that. How was he going to learn about wood release now? But there is a secret hidden room in where I know you will defiantly find what you're looking for, she finished. Can you show it to me? Naruto said excitedly, his voice a little louder than it usually was. Tsunade looked at the paperwork on her desk, then at her hopeful cute grandson. Paperwork. Naruto. Paperwork, definitely Naruto. Let's go right now. I needed a break anyway, she said cheerfully, standing up from her desk. She walked up to Naruto, grabbing his shoulder. They both disappeared in a swirl of leaves. They appeared at the Senju house. Naruto hunched forward, feeling a bit dizzy from the transportation. Sorry, I forgot about that. You'll get used to it, Tsunade said, rubbing his back to relieve him of the vertigo he was feeling. The Shunshin was a fast movement transportation that had the nasty effect of causing nausea because of the high speed that the body moved it. Most Jonins and Chunin usually get over the effects after constant use of the Shunshin. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. That was disorienting, Naruto said, feeling the vertigo pass over. Tsunade gave him an apologetic look. That's the Shunshin for you. Naruto nodded his head, wondering if he could learn it too someday. It seemed like an effective technique for traveling short distances. Could you teach it to me? Tsunade gave him an amused smile as she walked inside the house. She had expected him to ask. That was her grandson, always looking for ways to improve himself. You'll find it at the local library. It's a D-rank technique. Naruto's eyes widened slightly in surprise but did not comment any further. He couldn't believe that such a technique was accessible to even academy students. To think if had learned that technique a long time ago, traveling to his little secret training ground would have been all so much easier. He followed his grandmother in silence as she led him to the basement. She turned on the lights, and what he saw surprised him. Shelves upon shelves of scrolls and books. He actually gasped audibly. All this information was laterally under his feet the whole time, and not once had he ever bothered to check the basement. Your sisters usually spend some time here learning a few jutsu. I'm surprised that you actually didn't know about this library. But why didn't you tell me? You never asked. Naruto sweet drop at that. Seriously, that was the best excuse she could come up with? Enough gawking, you'll check the library some other time. Right now we still have something important we are looking for. Right. They walked past the many shelves to the back of the large underground library. Naruto raised an eyebrow when they stopped in front of a wall. He was again surprised when his grandmother started going through a few head seals. Kai! She shouted, slamming her hands on the ground, and to his astonishment, a complex seal matrix formed on the ground. Tsunade bit her thumb and pressed a bleeding thump on the seals. The seals started to glow, and the ground started to shake slightly. A horizontal square stone slowly slid away from the ground where the seals were, and behind a staircase leading deeper within the ground could be seen. Tsunade did not hesitate and descended down the stairs. She looked at a dumbstruck grandson. Well, aren't you coming? Naruto, shaking, nodded his head and with a hesitant step followed her. They did not walk for more than a few steps before coming to a dead end. The light from the library gave them a clear view of the steps and the dead-end wall. Naruto could see a keyhole that strangely enough looked like a. Tsunade took the necklace from around her neck and inserted it into the keyhole, and to his surprise it fit perfectly. Walls started shaking and started dropping to the ground, not before Tsunade had taken the crystal necklace back. Naruto blinked when he saw what was behind the wall. It was a small room with a table, a chair, and a few scrolls neatly folded in a box under the table. It looked like a study. That sent red flags in his mind. Why would anyone go through so much trouble as to hide a study? This used to be first and on a later date the second Hokage's secret study. They used this room to have private meetings, and here Tsunade explained making some of the scrolls in that box were written by the first Hokage. They contain information in his would release and how to control it. Naruto's almost fainted in shock. This very room was once used by the previous Hokages, and his grandmother was going to give him scrolls written by the first Hokage himself. His lips started trembling, whether from happiness or excitement he could not tell. He did something that Tsunade never expected him to do. He launched at her and gave her a hug and was actually laughing in excitement. Thank you, Bachan. I don't know what to say, he said happily, still hugging her. Tsunade patted him on top of his head. For once he actually did not mind the gesture. Think nothing of it, brat. Besides, if I don't help my grandson to become strong, then how else is he going to attract a strong woman to give me many strong healthy grandchildren? A small blush appeared on Naruto's face, which made Tsunade laugh lightly. So what are you waiting for? That box is not going to pick itself. Naruto bent down and started to drag the box with scrolls in it. He pulled the box from under the table, saw something that grabbed his attention. Under the box, a small handle. Curious, he pulled it open and saw a large scroll inside. Bachan, what is this? He said after removing the rather large scroll and showing it to his grandmother. Tsunade looked at the scroll with a raised eyebrow and picked it up to get a closer look. On the side of the scroll she could something written on it, but it was covered by dust. Clearing the dust away, she saw a single word, ego, written in kanji vertically. Her eyes lit up in recognition as she remembered what the scroll was. Naruto, do you know what this is? She said loudly, almost screaming. Naruto nearly jumped when he heard her yell. Honestly, having no idea what the giant scroll was, he shook his head. This is a summoning contract. Not just any contract, but the same summoning contract my grandfather used. I thought it had been lost all those years ago, but now here it is. Naruto was certain his brain was going to explode sooner or later from the many surprises he had seen today. First there was an on-tier library under their house that everyone knew about except for him. Then his grandmother showed him a secret meeting room that was once used by the Hokages. Then his grandmother was giving him scrolls that were written by the first Hokage, and now he was looking at a summoning contract that was used by the first Hokage. He didn't even know that he had a summoning contract. Maybe he should activate his Sharingan to make sure that this was not a dream, or some powerful genjutsu. After all, his brain could only take so much surprises in a day. Whilst Naruto was having a mental Tsunade was having one of her own. She was excited, ecstatic. She couldn't believe that she had found something important like this. This was a summoning contract that her grandfather had used. To her it was like she was a relic of her clan, something to show that her clan had not completely vanished. She had a few things to remind her of clan, her family. The necklace she had was one of the few things she had to remind her family. Their belongings had either been lost during the war, stolen, or taken by the village. She could still remember the day when her father had one day offered her to sign the contract. Unfortunately, by then she had already signed the slug contract. Her father had been slightly disappointed, but the promise that his youngest son, her little brother, would sign the contract. However, things did not go as planned. She looked at the contract. She was defiantly never going to use it. She already had a summoning contract. Now what would she do with it? She looked at Naruto, who looked like he was in deep thought, and her eyes lit up. She may not have been able to sign it herself back then, but maybe her grandson would. She looked at him again. He was the only living senju left who could do so, and he is a perfect candidate. Naruto, she said sweetly, bringing him back from his thoughts. Yes? How would you like to sign the eagle summoning contract? What? And me? Yes, you, unless of course there is another Naruto here. Thank you, Bacha. I am truly grateful for what you have done for me today. Think nothing of it. Besides, you will pay me back later with many grandchildren, right? Right, Naruto drawled out. He took the summoning contract from her and placing it on the ground. He rolled it out and saw 2 names written on it. Senju Hashirama, Senju Keiji. Who's that? Naruto asked, reading the names written on the contract. Tsunade frowned as she looked at the names written on the scroll. Your great-great-grandfather, she sadly as she looked at her father's name. Oh, pushing the depressing emotions that were arising aside and putting on a smile on her face, all you have to do is to sing the contract by writing your name using your blood. Naruto nodded his head. He beat his thumb and wrote his name. In order to summon, you draw your blood from the hand which you signed the contract with. The type and size of summon you want to summon is determined by the amount of chakra you use. The more chakra you add, the bigger the summon will be. The hand seals are boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram, and then you say summoning jutsu, and that's it. Naruto nodded his head, listening to his grandmother. Again, thank you, Bachan. After parting with his grandmother, walked to his secret training ground. Arriving at the training ground, the ground was now covered in small patches of green grass. He had long since filled the crater that was in the middle of the training ground. That fight with his mother had really done a number on his private training ground. Fortunately, the once blackened ground was now a healthy green. He unsealed the box with the scrolls inside and started looking through them. He looked through the scrolls and was pleased to find one that was written water manipulation on it. He placed the scroll aside for later use. He found another scroll written earth manipulation. Kami must be happy with me today, he said quietly. After all, he had promised to improve his earth and water manipulation, and today he just found scrolls on them. What were the odds? After searching through a few scrolls, he finally found it. It was a plain green scroll in the bottom of the box. He opened it, and instantly his eyes lit up at what he saw. Would release is a combination of water and earth-based chakra. In order for one to gain a good control of Mokuton ninjutsu, you must have good control over both your earth and water affinities. Naruto looked at the 2 scrolls on both water and earth manipulation and sighed. I guess there is no helping it. He closed the scroll he was reading and sealed it away. Water and earth manipulation